Good evening, everybody. It was a very wearying day today, but I am here at the very end of my opening window, but we managed to make it. I wasn't originally expecting to do Soma tonight, but then it also occurred to me that I'm not 100% sure where I would fit Soma, and I do really like this game, and I think it's a very well done science fiction story. So I sort of figured that this would be a good one to return to on Wednesday, today. Now, I'm very unlikely to follow this up on Friday, and again, it's not for any dislike of the game, but I would really like to return to Book of Hours, which has been a while since we've played it. But I also don't intend to rush Soma, so if we don't finish it, I'll try and find another time to play it. But maybe we can focus on what we can do today rather than, try to plan out too much for tomorrow. I hope you're all doing well, and I hope that the game starts showing. There we go. So for those of you that are wondering why I'm returning to this, first of all, it's been a while since I've played this. I'm kind of realizing that there are games that I have played or I'm familiar with that, because of the amount of time between when I played it, not even necessarily when the game was released, but just simply when I played it, I can occasionally run into people, asking, "Oh, have you ever played? Are you aware of?" And then a game that I really enjoyed. And I mean, that's fine, because it's kind of like talking about movies now. I don't think I count as a movie buff anymore, just because I have been spending more time catching up on old movies I haven't seen before, as opposed to watching a lot of the ones on streaming services. But there's definitely some special ones out there, both movies and games. So it's never bad to be recommended something that you really enjoyed, and also sometimes gives you an indication that you're on the right track in terms of what you're playing, which I've kind of been wondering about for a while. But with all that said, because Soma is such an enjoyable story, I feel that it's better to play it in close proximity to the previous run, and we did that at the end of Christmas's stream. I wasn't even necessarily planning on doing it on Christmas, but I kind of was in the mood, so I figured I would pick it up. I would take it up and take it the whole way through, or as far as I could, at least. And then the only thing to say is that I can't go super late like I did last broadcast, because I do still have work in the morning, and in fact I need to be physically present at work tomorrow, so it's a little harsher. Just give me a second. And in my rush to try and make that 1 hour window, I still need to get my writing in for today, as well as a couple of other things that I sort of committed to myself to do. I got woken up early, and then I wound up sort of napping to catch up, but I didn't set an alarm for the nap, so that's why I come to you belatedly. But enough excuses. We will continue from where we left off. Simon has crash landed near a site called Delta. He is still trying to get to the Ark, but to do so, he first needs to go to Theta. Now, for the benefit of people who have not played this game before, I'll talk a little bit about the story up to this point here. I think Soma does a very nice job of informing you through the loading screens like this as to what's been happening. I actually think it's not a bad way of going about it, because it's sometimes annoying if a game kind of keeps beating you over the head with, where you're at in terms of the story. He was like, "Thanks, game, I was there." Although, it never hurts to get a little bit of a refresher, particularly for something particularly dense. But the excuse me, the idea of stepping away from a game and coming back. Hello, Bionic Beans. Congratulations on your first stream. I went to check your channel and see if you had a VOD up. Yeah, I was just on my way out when you announced that you'd streamed, so congratulations. I don't want to pull you away from sweeps if you if you'd prefer to stay there. But thank you very much for saying hello, and I'm glad that I got a chance to wish you congratulations or a hearty hello for your inaugural broadcast. I don't know if there's anybody else here to shout you out to, but if you are looking to grow an audience, I don't know if mine is what you're looking for, but obviously I'm happy to let more people know that you're a broadcaster when next time you come by. Cured, how are you doing? Good evening. Excited to watch you play Soma. Absolutely love this game. I do too. I actually did play this historically. And Merry belated Christmas to you. I did actually. I had to smile because I saw that Human Resource Corporation was made available on the Epic Store. Now, obviously, I already own that. I was kind of hoping for Little Inferno actually because you mentioned it. You're at work currently, so you may not be able to stick around. No, I completely understand. That's what VODs are for. Not that I expect you to play on the VOD, but yeah, I did want to say I didn't play Human Resource Machine on Christmas just because I sort of kept it aside. I was like, well, it would be nice, like it would be mean to like do the game and then have the person most excited to see the game not come in after it's done, and then I wound up doing Soma anyway. So I'm glad that you're into Soma, but you have given me something to think about because I do like the Zachtronics sort of stuff, and I think it's one that I can probably do in future. I realize it's not like a full Zachtronics game, but it does have some some of the programming elements that make it interesting. But anyways, good luck at work, and I look forward to a chance to an extended interaction with you whenever the hours permit. Didn't see you live on Christmas, so I didn't stop by. Also, hopefully. Fair enough. Yeah, no, I wasn't actually that far off from when I normally start. I started a little earlier on the Monday, but I also went very, very late there. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, again, that's not I don't take attendance. That's more just to let you know because I do know you watch the VODs. I figured because we had talked about that, I always feel a certain sense that when I ask people's opinions for games that they're interested in, to acknowledge it and sort of let them know if they're expecting otherwise. Hello, Be Freefuls. It was okay. I will confess, I did learn the hard lesson that I seem to keep relearning over and over again, which is sometimes I have to say this is why we can't have nice things. I try to do things that make people excited, and I definitely am feeling quite discouraged about a large part of the Christmas streams. But on the other hand, the Christmas streams aren't for me. So if other people had fun, that's good. And if they didn't have fun, then perhaps I should reconsider the institution, such as it is. That's also a vote for Little Inferno by Bionic Beans. I don't actually own it, so we were talking about the company that made it, Beans, but that is good to know that is something that has a consensus view on it. Because I think I saw one trailer for it which didn't explain anything about the game, so I kind of just moved on from it. But if multiple people are recommending the game for me, then that's one I should follow up on. I mean, I pretty much always say yes to things, but I would feel very bad accepting that and then not playing it. But I'm sure, like, if you have a spare key that is available, that will help me. But if you're going to go out of your way to pick it up, that's not necessary, because I'm sure I'll be able to pick it up when it's when it's on sale and go into it. Especially because I do actually want to see what the game is about before I commit to doing it. But that's very kind of you to ask. Also, hello, Index Gnome. I was under the impression you didn't care for Soma, so thank you for stopping by. I know apparently most of the games that I've been doing lately have been... Oh, thank you. Thank you, Beans. I feel like most of the games I've been doing lately have been ones that people have said that they don't care too much for, but gotta go with with what I feel is right. But anyway, sorry, I was intending to talk about where we were in terms of the story. So one of the things that's nice about, and I think Frictional does this for all of their games. I can't recall if Penumbra does this immediately, but I'm pretty sure the Amnesia games do. Essentially, it lets you sort of know in between play sessions, hey, here's what you were up to, which is good, because I sort of stopped playing Pillars of Eternity at some point, and I'm just scared to go back to it because they have weird spellings of very conventional names and a whole world that they're trying to build, and I'm scared there's going to be a quiz. And it is actually something that has stopped me from getting back into the game because I just know I'm going to have to get familiar with all of that stuff again. Whereas something like this does a nice job of sort of bringing me up to speed. But for those of you that don't have the benefit of everything that happened before, we're playing a character, I believe the character's name's Simon Jarrett. He's a Torontonian who was in a car crash, effectively is dying of his, slowly dying from his injuries. Essentially, he sustained some kind of a head injury, which is causing his, I think he's bleeding in his brain, and he's taking medications, and I believe they're trying to drain it when possible. But he basically goes in for a brain scan, and the very next moment he wakes up in what is maybe not immediately clear as an underwater research facility. Like there's sort of diving suits and things like that around, but it could also be space suits. It could be a number of things. All of the terminals say that the year is, the 21, so 2100. Thanks, Index Gnome. And hello, Charles Umstead. Hope you're doing well. And you encounter largely it's an abandoned facility, but there are definitely things that I will call monsters running around. And there do seem to be some conscious people that you can interact with. But another feature is that you encounter robots which describe them. You have also run into humans who are being kept alive by machines, but for the most part, you've not encountered a lot of living humans. But there is evidence that there are living human beings. But you're also running into a number of robots which are insisting that they are human, and they will make gestures to show to you that they are human, but to you, they are robots doing robot things. So, when they say, it's like, I'm right here in front of you, see me waving my hand, and you have a robot with a human voice waving a robot hand in front of you. And this becomes significant because when there was a breach in a sort of a communication center we were in, which flooded with water, we went from seeing ourselves as having hands of flesh to being at minimum in some kind of diving suit. And certainly one of the other characters have essentially called us a walking diving suit. And so this has led to some speculation in chat as to whether or not the character is a cyborg, because we've heard heavy breathing and we've heard, a heartbeat. Certainly the people who we see as robots are accusing us of having a hallucination. We, of course, seem to have time traveled in some form. So there's any number of explanations in terms of what could be happening to this character, who very clearly is an unreliable narrator. But hello, Vesper Fortune. Speaking of streamers, so just a quick update for those of you who are coming in. We've got Bionic Beans, who just started broadcasting, and Vesper Fortune VT, who I believe I most recently saw. I know this wasn't the most recent thing you were doing, but I most recently saw stream the very memorable GE commercial, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I am talking about the stop motion one, in which he had a very unique and colorful perspective to add to the to the motion picture. That was actually a lot of fun. It was like a text version of sort of Mystery Science Theater inside, and he had some embarrassingly nice things to say about me, which is nice, because I do sometimes feel a little sorry for myself. I wasn't going to say this before, so I'm going to just clarify, because this is a nice chance to say something nice about someone. But it is easy, and this has actually been true for the past couple of years, to feel quite sorry for myself on streaming. And it's one of these things that makes me make sure I do things other than streaming. And it's a very unfortunate tendency, and I think this is just a general tendency among a certain type of person who's attracted to sort of Twitch and gaming and sort of nerdy hobbies in general, where people really like to be the sort of person that's like, oh yeah, I'm going to break your balls, because we're like really good friends, right? And I don't think, like, the one thing I always keep kind of talking about a lot is the like some of the worst stuff in the world, whether it's a game or people you're running into, or like people who take themselves too seriously. So for instance, I think Jonathan Blow is a very talented game designer. I do find it quite difficult to watch some of his broadcasts or to read some of his opinions on Twitter. And the one thing that really made me feel very sad, and this is whether it was Indie Game the movie or, his reaction to The Looker, is that he really does not seem to appreciate that some of the things that people are, like, he might see as making fun of, are people actually showing a very deep appreciation, very close reading of his works, and they are, adding to it rather than diminishing it. And the reason why I say I find that very sad is that obviously if you are somebody who's put a lot of work into doing something and you feel that, people who are celebrating that particular work are attacking it, that's a very, like, I that doesn't feel great, right? I am a very minor figure, and I've had a fairly strong set of reactions to things that I've done that have been negative, and it definitely feels very bad. So the drawback is that, again, people really like, so I always want to be careful about taking myself too seriously, because obviously I'm a clown in terms of Twitch chat, and then, I obviously do go for the silly side. I try and embrace that. But one of the drawbacks is that when people have a very strong tendency to want to be the, oh yeah, we're such good friends, I'm gonna rip into you each time. The difficulty sometimes is it can be a very long time where I hear something positive that I've done. So I'll hear, I don't like backseating, but it happens a lot. And you'll know that, like if I play a game well, I won't necessarily hear anything about it, but when I do something wrong in a game, I'll never hear the end of it. And the difficulty is because there's a higher willingness to do the one rather than the other one, it can actually really create a situation where broadcasting is just one of these things you kind of need to armor up for and just be ready to deal with the fact that you're mostly going to hear things that are very minor negative things, but are kind of like a steady drip over a very long period of time. And I keep that to myself because even talking about it now, it's miserable. Nobody wants to hear this stuff. But the reason why I'm setting it up is that it does mean when people say nice things, that it means something a bit more. And that is one of the reasons why I try and talk about people's qualities in terms of their broadcasts. But on top of that, when Vesper kind of comes in and, and I come into their channel and actually says some very kind things about me, that does have an extra impact. And like I said, again, the point of this is not to be some sort of sad sack, and it's not to say, oh, you all don't compliment me enough or whatever. It's like people are going to engage the way that they want to engage. But it is helpful to remember the context. I mean, so the biggest thing that's always going to be true is you never know what's happened to someone just before they've logged in, and that can be as a broadcaster or as a viewer. And you don't really know the circumstances that they're working under. And again, just to be clear, this is something that I very, very rarely talk about, if ever. But I do think that there's some value in praising the people who have, made the exception or gone above and beyond. And in this particular case here, Vesper just happened to say some very nice things when I stopped by their channel, and it made me feel really good. And why not take a minute to thank them for that? So I apologize for the circuitous route to get there, but I thought it would be more meaningful rather than just say, hey, they say nice things, which of course can be said for other people. Again, I definitely don't want it to be taken the wrong way, but to be able to specifically ground why something felt particularly good in a particular time and place, I think has a little bit more meaning there. And so again, the clear emphasis there is on the building up of broadcasters, not necessarily any particular conditions myself. On to the story. All right, so we just got off of a crash. So we also have a companion in our multi-tool.
I'll never get this open.
We saved this guy before.
Oh, hey, little guy. Didn't expect to see you again. Don't worry, Kath. I'll find a way to Theta.
I do like crabs. Yeah, so for those of you not familiar with who made this game, this is by Frictional Games, who are responsible for the Amnesia series. I was talking a little bit about how I'm a little worried that from some of the reactions to Soma, whether they feel a certain obligation to make more Amnesia games as opposed to games like Soma, because it is a very unique kind of take. It is kind of like a horror game. It's I would say it's much better described as a science fiction game with horror elements in it. But if I denied the horror aspects to it, then I feel like I would be doing a very mean thing to somebody who might be a little skittish.
Come in, Strasky. Can you hear me? Theta, listen. Akers is headed for Theta.
Delta will organic, getting a signal but no audio.
Strasky, it's Komorebi. Akers has gone mad. He's dangerous. Strasky!
Sorry, Delta. Still no audio. Try calling from another access point.
Strasky, I can try sending. I have pictures.
I totally didn't pay attention to the contents of those pictures. Then again, I guess it's a little hard to see exactly what's going on there. Yes, I know I'm being quiet during this part, but there will be plenty for us to talk about. This just happens to be one of those atmospheric moments where it's sometimes a little weird to be kind of prattling on when there's not as much to talk about. By the way, for the technically inclined among you, I believe this version of the HPL engine is actually open source from Frictional. I don't think the new versions are. But I do know for a while they were making these tools open source. Although, to be clear, because I know there are a few people here who either are game developers or aspiring game developers, it is sometimes a little hard to talk about, you know, open source tools from dev teams just simply because, you know, it's not like the engine part is the hard part now. You know, we have multiple competing, very capable engines available almost for free. Still. Might be better for me to try the different channels at each location first. Nope.
I'm sweating in this suit.
Hey, could you maybe help? I need to get to Theta.
Help me out here, will you?
Listen.
Don't worry about it. I got this.
Hey, can you hear me?
Give me some room, will you?
Listen.
Make yourself useful.
Hey, you.
Don't worry about it. I got this.
Housekeeping. The light is hurting my eyes. He's telling me that I don't need this vitreous flesh inside my skull to see salvation. I will gladly remove them, stop them from obfuscating this divine mission. There is a wonderful Riff Tracks episode. A reflection in the black door of our warden whispers. I need to save them from this hell. Let them sleep. Lock them in the lucid dreams I've seen. It does look very good. Some of the human characters maybe look a little... I think I know what's in that locker. Some of the human characters definitely reflect the age a little bit, but like that's a very, very minor, point. Like it's not distracting, and the amount of attention that went into, environments like this really sell it. Like I've not pulled out by Munchie, let's say. But I'm completely captivated by even an environment like this. It's exciting to watch WoW... let's just do this. It's exciting to watch WoW claim Delta. Half a year ago, I'd be worried. I'd have Goya and Juan clean the black blood from the machinery. Now, its crusty surfaces seem to complement, even outside, what Delta was. I'm sure they'll add the chess as a DLC later. Anyways, there was a there's a really good Riff Tracks episode for the movie. What was it? Stone Cold, starring, is his name Brian Bosworth? He was like some NFL star who apparently like had a really expensive contract but didn't really do anything. It's a unique look. Like I think this is a very, very good looking game.
I think I need some vacation, sir. I have to speak to Akers about that. Isn't that right, Akers?
And I think all the attention is in the right places. But yeah, anyways, I just seeing Vesper's comment on cleanup on aisle 4. Riff Tracks has a lot of fun with a lot. You have to watch the episode for it, but there's a fun riff on cleanup on aisle 4 that basically runs through the entire film. So for those of you that happen to like Mystery Science Theater or Riff Tracks, I do recommend the Stone Cold. I gotta get me one of these for the house apartment.
Good robot.
Ah. UH manual K8 UH8 K8 UH8 Intelligence Complex AN7U class Universal Light Universal Helper Remote Pilot NA. Note: while K8 lacks a voice module, also lacks a violence module, it is able to communicate via simplified sounds and lights. Bull UH3 Intelligence Complex AN5U class Medium Worker Remote Pilot supported. Topa MUH9 Intelligence Complex AN7U class Mini UH Remote Pilot NA. And Qualia RV2 Basic A2U Research Vessel Remote Pilot mandatory. Note: the vessel has basic intelligence only. A pilot is needed to fully utilize its equipment. Not a word you hear much, but you think about all the time. Well, now we're gonna look it up. In philosophy of mind, qualia are defined as instances of subjective conscious experience. So it's a joke. The term qualia derives from the Latin neuter plural form qualia, the Latin adjective qualis, meaning of what sort, or of what kind in relation to a specific instance, such as what is it like to taste a specific apple, this particular apple now. Examples of qualia include the perceived sensation of pain of a headache, the taste of wine, the redness of an evening sky. As qualitative characteristics of sensation, qualia stand in contrast to propositional attitudes, where the focus is on beliefs about experience rather than directly directly like to be experiencing. American philosopher Charles Sanders Peirce introduced the term, quale, in philosophy in 1866, and in 1929, C.I. Lewis, no relation to, well, maybe relation to the fantasy author, who knows, was the first to use the term qualia in a generally agreed upon modern sense. Frank Jackson later defined qualia as certain features of the bodily sensations, especially, but also of certain perceptual experiences, which no amount of purely physical information includes. Philosopher and cognitive scientist Daniel Dennett, also known as Atheist Santa, suggested that qualia was an unfamiliar term for something that could not be more familiar to each of us, the way things seem to us. The nature and existence of qualia under various definitions remain controversial. Much of the debate over the importance of qualia hinges on the definition of the term, and various philosophers emphasize or deny the existence of certain features of qualia. Some philosophers of mind, like Daniel Dennett, argue that qualia do not exist. Other philosophers, as well as neuroscientists and neurologists, believe qualia exist, and that the desire by some philosophers to disregard qualia is based on an erroneous interpretation of what constitutes science. Messages 2103, August 12th, from Theta Kronstedt, Delta Evacuation. Terry, it's been decided that you and your crew will evacuate to Theta on the 14th. Everything is being taken care of, and you will be given new positions as you arrive. You'll have to fall into the ranks, of course. The last thing we need is more leaders. Kronstedt. Fuck you, Kronstedt. I'm not going anywhere. You don't have the authority to make me. Terry. This isn't my orders, you idiot. I'm just the messenger. You want to stay? I can buy you some time if you want to hang out at your dump, but your crew is moving tomorrow. Kronstedt. Evacuation successful. Mr. Akers, I'm happy to inform you that your crew has safely arrived at Theta. Let me know when you are ready to move, and I will send a transport. Peter Strasky, I believe he was the security representative from last broadcast, Theta Dispatch. Strasky Theta, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to Mr. Akers. Don't hesitate to ask if you want to be relocated to Theta. Peter Strasky, Theta Dispatch, and that was August to December, so Akers decided to stay for a good long time. Guess I'll have to go somewhere else. Isn't there a single urinal in the entire base?
Rested shut. Probably for the best. Not sure I trust the shuttle train anymore.
I guess I never really did follow up with the channels.
Yeah? You put in a good word for me? I'm not sure that's a good thing. I'm just messing with you.
Okay, so I'm establishing links, but I probably haven't actually looked or seen too much anything to sort of interact with. I should probably pick what I'm trying to do before I go to... Alright, shipping. Malfunction, Himatsu Station from Phi, frame components to Lambda, Pascal cartridge to Theta, fuselage from Lambda, arc shell to Phi, Delta evacuation to Theta, Komoribi survey group from Theta, unspecified to Theta. Zeppelins. 49 is idle, 840 is, and 216 don't seem to be anywhere. Alright, so we gotta get 49.
Brandon, did you move the Carthage casing? We need to test that. Before we shoot.
By the way, I realize this is probably a very minor point for anybody who makes games, but I really do like how they sell the underwater, like the feeling of being
Transport
underwater.
active. Unspecified cargo.
The Zeppelin's on its way. Better get ready.
Strasky, you can see the Zeppelin now.
Good. Sorry about the mess. Without the positioning system, the Zeps just keep losing their set routes. Volchev did say that you could have fixed it on your side by redigging the antenna. Guess it doesn't matter now. Are all of you coming?
No, just me, Goy, and Creer. Akers is set up being a stubborn old man.
All right. See you soon, Brandon. Happy evac.
Peter, can you hear me?
I hear you, Terry. I mean, Mr. Akers, sir.
I've changed my mind. I would like to come to Theta. Let Delta sleep.
Of course. Wow. Honestly, didn't expect to hear from you again. Such a long time since you checked in. We have a few divers in a Zeppelin surveying Lambda at the moment. I'll just make sure they pick you up when they're done.
Thank you for the warning. I'll make sure they feel welcome.
Okay. See you when you get here.
I feel like any radio message ending with heh 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 should immediately call into question every request made before. So remember, I guess it's flying monster. Yeah. So yeah, there's the obvious. But I'm just thinking in terms of little basics, right? So like if I were to think of this this game, so like we'll just do the normal act of walking forward, right? So, you know, it's not exactly like you would see inside of a normal game. But head bob is something, I mean, we can see those in like 90s era first-person shooters. I think there's probably a little bit more drift. One of the things that really sells it are sort of the floating objects in the environment, right? So just these little particles going through. And then, of course, the sound, like just about everything, you know, the sound really, really sells it. But it's always just kind of funny to think about all of the individual elements that go into making something like this, because part of this just comes down to a little bit of my time in film where, you know, I worked mostly on science fiction television shows, but not every single one of them. And it was true that the, you know, was it Lifetime, you know, movie of the week sort of stuff that I shot, where, you know, those were shot on sound stages, and then, you know, the science fiction show, The Alien Planets, a very large majority of what was shot was on a soundstage, right? Sometimes the exact same soundstage. And so, in the end, the difference between the alien planet or the spaceship or, you know, the woman's apartment as she's finding herself are going to be, like, essentially they are the same. I'm basically going to the same place for work. but there's a number of different things, and specifically in terms of the movie, it's going to basically be anything that is within the bounds of those, those four corners of the screen. Whereas in the case of the game, because it's interactive, there's a different set of tools that you'll use to try and create a particular feeling. So I don't know. It's just one of these things where it's very easy to take for So I think the biggest thing for me is that there's a lot of things I like about Soma, but one thing that is very easy to take for granted is how well this game sells me on being taking place completely underwater. And yet I don't think it's the sort of thing that when you're talking about what a good game Soma is, I don't really think it's necessarily what you would want to it doesn't really merit comment, right? It's just one of those things that you would imagine is necessary for the game to work. But, I mean, I'm sure maybe one of you who knows how to mess with the source, maybe you could start removing the individual components. That might be actually a good lesson for game designers, right? How many components can you remove from Soma until people are no longer convinced that it's underwater?
Calm down. We're safe.
Oh, it's really disconcerting popping in and out of existence like that. Where are we now?
Delta. At least that's what you said before the crash.
Oh, right. Of course. Is this a Zeppelin?
Appropriately named. You think it can get us to Theta?
It's a cargo transport. They use them for moving materials between the sites, anything that's too big for the shuttles. I'm sure it can carry us. Why won't it work? Come on. Oh, the tool chip is bust.
Isn't that part of the Omni tool?
Look who's been paying attention.
I had to deal with that back at Upsilon.
Then you know how it works. We need to get a new tool chip and switch it.
Care to point me in the direction of the closest tool chip storage?
I think it would be easier to just take one from a robot.
What? Just knock a robot over the head and steal their chips?
The toolbox over there says it has a stun baton. You could use that.
Come on. I don't want to hurt anyone. Isn't this a bit much?
It's just a robot, Simon.
We're just robots. Sort of. I'll get us a chip. I feel awful.
The robots only appear intelligent. They're much more like dogs than humans.
I wouldn't hit a dog.
Sorry, poor choice of words.
I don't want to hurt anything.
Well, we need a tool chip or we're stuck here. Take the stun baton from the box I opened and hunt down a robot with a working tool chip. Take the stun baton from the box right over there and then go look for a robot with a working tool chip.
Guess I have no choice.
Hey, little guy. So this is actually a fun problem, right? Do you go for the helpful little servant? So just a reminder on what were the breakdowns? Just before I'm about to have my little breakdown.
You saw that, right? You saw Akers fucking injecting that shit into them?
He got me pretty bad.
I think I made it worse pulling away. I can feel it bleeding out. Can you see him?
Fuck. He got on the Zeppelin. He's going back to Theta. We have to warn them.
Good luck with that. The platform radio is dead. Remember?
The Lumar Annex should work. It has to.
Yeah. You go. I'm not gonna make it. I'm just not.
Come on, Evans. We have to warn them. Come on.
Zeppelin control remote, remote access denied, error 92874. Control remote admin, remote access denied, error 92886. FR override MK, invalid command, FR override Komaribi. Responder right suspended, error 3948. Fuck you, Akers. Invalid command. Zep. Stratsky, Theta, Zep. Akers is doing some strange shit. He just took the Zeppelin back to Theta. Don't let him dock. Shut it the fuck down. Hey, you don't have a tool I can use, huh? Okay, so back to the breakdown, right? So this is our little friend here, the K8, UH8, Intelligence Complex AN7U, class Light Universal Helper, didn't have a remote pilot. While K8 lacks a voice module, it is able to communicate via simplified sounds and lights. So I'm pretty sure it's a bull that we're working with here. So we got the UH3 bull, AN5U, medium worker, and it's got remote pilot supported. So the part that's interesting about this one, the reason why I wanted to take the time to sort of go over the distinction here, and I think this is the reason why they include the manual, is that sometimes, so if we're going to have to get a chip, right, do we take the tool chip out of this one, which doesn't have a remote pilot capability, and then we have another person, quote unquote, roaming around. I'm pretty sure if I left click, I'm not going to be able to have a conversation.
Man, you can really tell when Astrid is off platform. This place turns into such a locker room. Not in a good way, either.
So, I think probably I suspect there's a moral dilemma that's being introduced here, right? Where we have encountered people before who said that they've gone on...
I don't know, man. I just say we can keep things classy, even when women aren't around. You know?
Oh god, he's woke! Left click! No. But no, basically, you have someone who, at least based on the...
Yeah. You're so full of shit, Brandon. I've seen you when payload manager Alice Coster shows up.
I think I'll just move away so we don't have the dialogue coming in. We go through. But basically you have someone who, at least by the standards of the previous encounters, seems to be someone who had gone remote and essentially winds up with their consciousness uploaded into a machine. Now, they don't seem to be responding to us, so there's a couple of meaningful differences in terms of like how it's behaving. It does sort of look like it's going through the motions as well as sort of expressing the kinds of thoughts that you would associate with somebody whose consciousness was uploaded to a machine. But basically, they're like us, right? If it does seem that Simon sort of has accepted this idea that he may not be flesh and blood anymore, based on the conversation before. And so the drawback here now is, right, like, what is, if you're going to wind up taking someone out in order to progress through the game, you know, do you take the cute little helpful creature that you saw, you saved before, that doesn't seem to have any evidence of consciousness, or because it's been helpful and it looks kind of cute, and you know you've built up a relationship. Do you take the stranger, right? This is kind of the, if you're a I mean, this isn't a full utilitarian argument here, but like the utilitarian
You
argument.
let her manage your payload? What? That doesn't even make sense. Come on, stop messing around and get back to work.
The old utilitarian question: if you're a doctor and you have seven patients who need organ transplants to live, and then you have you have one healthy individual come in, would you sacrifice the individual, harvest them for their organs so that 7 other people can live? And then, essentially on what basis do you do that, or do you not do that? Again, I don't really think anybody specifically is going to say, oh yeah, I'd totally harvest the guy, but working on the nearly illogical. But obviously trying to decide your reasoning.
Come on.
Oh, I feel even worse. I think I might have taken out the little guy last time. I feel a little bad about this now.
I hope this works.
I'm not saying this is the moral choice. I'm just saying he's too cute to save. Oh, he disapproves. That's a really nice touch to make you like have to do it multiple times and the thing expresses pain.
Thanks, Simon. Don't be mad, okay? We really needed that chip. We'd be stuck here.
Could you do it? Kill a robot like that?
I get attached to them too. I'm not a monster. But in this case, it had to be done.
He was talking. I mean, he was delusional, but he seemed sincere. Present.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's fine.
Was he really that different from us? It's just beginning to sink in. I mean, really sink in. I'm a robot.
Didn't we cover this already?
I guess I've known ever since I woke up at Upsilon. I just keep suppressing it. Like my brain doesn't want me to think about it. It's really getting hard not to think about it.
Yeah. Could you maybe hit that switch over there so we could get moving?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I always thought there was a big reveal in a mirror. I wonder if I missed that.
slight Delta detour, but we're back on track.
Yeah.
We should touch down on a cargo platform just outside Theta. Then we just head inside, grab the Dunbat, and head down the abyss. 4,000 meters. That's a long way. We don't have to worry, though, because with the Dunbat, the Ark could have been in the Mariana Trench. It'll hold for anything.
That's great.
And then we can start listening to other people when they talk, because that's how conversations work.
What? Oh, sorry. I just can't stop thinking about what we've become. It's clear that we're no longer human. But then how can I feel like Simon? How can I feel like anything at all? I mean, technically, I don't have any ears, no mouth. Christ, that's a weird thing to think about. I mean, I'm making sounds. I'm still saying things.
You sure are. Okay. Your new body most likely has senses similar to those you had as a human. And your mind, only knowing one way to perceive the world, superimposes that skill set on top of your new features.
So my mind is covering it up, pretending nothing's different.
If it didn't, you'd probably be incapable of interacting with the world at all. And the stress would either kill you or make you go insane.
So I've found a good balance between awareness and ignorance. Does that mean I shouldn't think about this stuff, or are my thoughts actually making me cope? Could I tip the balance by suddenly gaining some insight and then go insane?
I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, we have real things to deal with. Saving mankind, remember? Speaking of which, we're closing in on Theta. I'll eject the Omnitool. As always, don't forget to take me with you.
Kath, before you go, the artificial intelligence you mentioned in the escape vessel?
Uh-huh, yeah, the Warden unit, the WOW.
Is it the WOW's fault that we're like this? I mean, it seems like something an unreliable AI would do.
I suppose it set the ball in motion, but it's not directed with purpose. It's really complicated to explain how machines think, Simon. Concentrate on getting inside Theta, okay? See you soon.
Strasky, wake up Dr. Masters. We're bringing in anchors.
What's wrong?
What can I say? He's had a rough day.
Jesus Christ. He's all butchered by structure shrapnel. The WOW sure did a number on him.
Brandon, flip the panic switch on the suit. I don't want to burn through the oxygen.
You're kidding, right? He's fucking hanging on by a thread. We need to move him.
Strasky, get the infirmary ready. We need to move fast.
Wait, where are Komorebi and the others?
This is all we got. I guess it's still at Delta.
Emma, I can't do this on my own. Grab the other side.
Strask, ready or not, we're coming in.
All right, see you soon.
This thing on? Can everyone hear me?
Go ahead, Strom.
Listen up, all members of staff. The art project has caused a lot of arguments the last few months. I'm not gonna pretend I understand what the hell Sarang talked about and how his continuity suddenly made sense to kill yourself. For the fucking love of God, or whatever you think is important, don't kill yourself. This place is miserable enough. Don't force your friends to clean up your blood. Rest in peace, all of you. Good?
Beautiful, sir. All right, everyone. Show's over. Get back to work.
I think this is actually a very good tool for workplaces, Cured, to make sure that you have like a nice low level of panic so that everybody in a workplace can feel like things could be worse, but not so bad that they're distracted from the task at hand. I'm going to assume that you're going to have one of your most productive days today. Thank you very much. A little panic is a treat.
Sir, are you there? Catherine? I'm busy working.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you for what you did.
Don't worry about it. But you should stand up for yourself. I mean, Strohmeyer doesn't have that kind of authority. You could just tell him to go fuck himself.
Oh, I just don't. I'm not that kind of a person.
You can't expect people to fight for you all the time. You're a brilliant person, Kath. You're so smart it makes my head spin, but sometimes you just disappear into yourself. Suddenly it's like talking to a fucking 5-year-old.
It's just hard. I can't just be more like that. Everyone would know I'm pretending.
It's not too late to win people over. Strasky likes you. I like you. Reed likes you.
Strasky likes everybody.
Yeah, that's true.
Wait, you think Reed likes me?
Catherine, a lot of people like you. You just need to open up a little. Be more approachable. Can I get back to work now? I'd rather not be reprimanded twice in one day.
Okay. See you back inside.
Over and out.
Hello, Eric Abu33. I'm going to assume you're referring to the "Don't kill yourselves in the name of the continuity" speech, which makes me wonder what was going on in Germany. Well, I guess other than the Cold War. See, I do get the impression I probably missed a couple of little story bits on the previous run, and you can see how easy it is to do, right? If I didn't just kind of go off to the side there and hear that audio log, but the big one for me was the was Simon recognizing, or at least believing that he's a robot. And I thought there was like a visual reveal of that, other than seeing your arms. I could be wrong. A variation of a speech you heard in many places: Korea, Iraq, Afghanistan, Macedonia, etc. Germany was just the first one that came.
I can figure this out.
Came to mind, but that also made date you, so Germany's probably not the best one for me to work with. Hello, Quinn Gold. Have you not seen Soma before? It is a very, very good game by Frictional Games, who did Amnesia: The Dark Descent is probably their most famous one. Well, I guess now it would probably be Rebirth and The Bunker, but maybe take a minute and see what's over here. But this is a really interesting one because they did, like, when people tend to think of Frictional, it does tend now to be...
That's everything, right? Thank you, Catherine. Wait. Am I already here?
Hello?
Who is that? Mark?
No, we haven't met before.
Is this Mark?
I think we're safe.
Oh, I was so worried something had gone wrong.
What's your name?
Robin Bass. Theta Field Service Technician.
Nice to meet you, Robin.
Let me see. I know this is a custom tool
get
set that they use to make
I
this.
got scanned, like the others. And then I killed myself. At least I think so. I can't remember that part.
How does that work? Did dying get you into the Ark?
Wow, you're definitely not from Theta. Let me guess, Omicron? Wasn't sure Catherine would be able to scan you guys. You're lucky. There was a lot of talk about this at Theta. The idea is, when you're activated in Ark, there's basically two of you, right? One human, one living scan in the Ark. You don't want your copy to survive you. You yourself want to survive on the Ark. If the human you dies before the scan is initiated, or closely after, you yourself would live on in the Ark. Amazing, right?
Did Catherine put you up to this? Killing yourself?
Catherine Chun? No. I don't think you understand. She just did scans and put them into the Ark. I hope I get to meet her soon so I can apologize. She always got into trouble with Strohmeyer when someone killed themselves.
I think she's okay with it.
Where is everyone? I thought there would be like 40 or 50 people here.
I don't know. I'll let you know if I see anyone. Robin, I'm not sure how to say this.
What?
This is
Yeah?
pretty amazing, right? I mean, the Ark.
Yeah, it's great. Catherine and the guys have really pulled through. They saved us all.
See you later.
Will do.
So actually, Quingle, it looks like it does run on Mac. I would obviously double check that because I know I am a very happy Mac user myself, and I know sometimes there are compatibility concerns, particularly when there's a new OS that comes out. But it is listed on Steam as being Mac compatible. Anyways, yeah, so Frictional, I believe, started with a series of games called Penumbra, and it was sort of a first-person narrative-style game, although it did have more combat elements than their more famous releases. And the one that really sort of seems to have put them on the map is the game Amnesia: The Dark Descent, which is very clearly a straight up horror game, although it definitely has some elements of sort of the moral dilemmas and some of the questions. So in Amnesia, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the plot because it is also a good story to watch, but it's or watch to experience. But you do have a character without, as the title would suggest, without memory of what they've done, and you do find out some of the things you have been doing in this, ancient manor, and sort of reckoning with some of the consequences of your choices there. I definitely think that there's probably the sharper philosophical distinctions made maybe in this game. But this was the follow-up to it. And again, the one thing I feel, I don't know how much, so I have to hope that Frictional Games are making the games that they want to make. What I have noticed is that my perception of this was that it wasn't as successful when it first came out, or at the very least there seemed to be this perception that because it wasn't like Amnesia, it wasn't as good, when my feeling was this was an excellent game. I would probably even say I liked it more than Amnesia. And again, I took a look, and the game seems to financially have done very well. So it did better than Amnesia when it first came out, and then I think a year or two after they hit sort of the break-even point. But there's always the question, right? Was it different enough from what people were expecting that maybe it didn't get the reception that they were hoping for, and that may be the reason why their subsequent games have been, follow-ups to the Amnesia series. So Amnesia Rebirth and now Amnesia: The Bunker. So, yeah, and this is the thing, Nearly Logical. So I have a feeling that probably my perception was driven by a very vocal group of people online, because what I have noticed whenever I mention Soma among the people who have watched it, anyone who has played it has always had very, very nice things to say about it. So what I suspect I am seeing is rather just being in particular circles, hearing the same talking point over and over again and disagreeing with it, and that leading to sort of the impression that it's not as that it wasn't as well received. But everything I've seen, and again, Wikipedia, the authority on everything, right? When you take a look at the receptions, it does tend to talk about how it does tend to talk both about the critical and commercial successes it had. Someone told you should only have Macs when you need to rebuild in the office so people could not play games when they work. Problem is that you would also struggle playing when at work, so no Mac in our office. See, this is actually kind of funny because to a certain extent Macs are better equipped for the games that people really like playing now. So I believe with Apple Arcade and a couple of updates to both iOS and macOS, and specifically the Mac Silicon or the Apple Silicon project, I think the whole idea is that it's effectively like if you deploy for the iPhone OS, let's say, you can basically just play it on anything. Now there's limits. I can tell you directly because I was really hoping to play Twilight Struggle on a phone, and it's only available on iPad. I think that's also true for Twilight Struggle Red Sea, but Labyrinth for some reason is available on phone. So it's not perfect, but I do know that at least for some of the Apple Arcade stuff, if you open up the App Store, you can actually open up the game. So I realize there is still a certain bias against mobile gaming, which is a shame because there's actually some very, very good mobile games, and there has been for a very long time. And of course, some very, very good games that I think people would associate as PC games available on mobile. So, you can play Divinity Original Sin 2 on an iPad, for crying out loud, and Civilization 6 on an iPad. But yeah, it's funny because if you think about it, the perception that Mac is not a good gaming platform, number one, technologically, actually, there do seem to be some things about the new chips that make it quite attractive in terms of being able to just do things. I think it's sort of the unified memory that actually enables some really interesting things on Macs. But then the drawback is are you really going to target Macs for something that's pushing the envelope? Presumably the way you're making the money back is by also putting it on consoles and PCs. But yeah, the main one is that everybody's a gamer now, and the reason everybody is a gamer is because they can they have these little game playing devices in their phone in their pockets, and then the question is are they an MMO player and do they play Twitter, or are they somebody who wants something a little bit more traditional and they do a match 3.
Hello? Anyone there? Well, Catherine, we found Theta.
Okay. M2, I thought we were on to the M3. I've got an M2, so... Well, the interesting thing too, Neologic, it's actually nice to have somebody who is a little bit more directly familiar with these things. I do... The one challenge that I have with this is that obviously the proposition is an interesting, thought to me. Because in the end, the question largely comes down to... so to me, it's probably more of an economic argument one way or the other. Would the type of people... Would the kind of person who can take advantage of it find themselves in a condition under which they would actually feel like it was worth their time? But it's also interesting to hear the technical limitations, mostly just because I think Larian has a decent relationship with Apple, and I think that's one of the reasons. I think they've got a bunch of support for for Divinity Original Sin 2 and Baldur's Gate 3. But the thing is that like Apple's not going to do that forever. You know, I'm sure they want to make it a good environment for people to be able to do things in. But if the conflict is between the consumer and the developer, Apple almost always chooses the consumer because that's who they pay them. And the evidence I take from this is just the number of developers I hear constantly complaining about App Store policies and Apple changing standards and things like that. But, again, it's cool to see Larian do this sort of stuff. But, I think any developer that wants to model themselves after Larian is probably not picking the most realistic comparison. And so it would be interesting to see whether or not, what you've introduced is feasible, but also whether or not it's really worth anybody's time to follow up on some of this stuff.
We're here? We're here! Okay, great. Time to hijack ourselves a submarine. There will be nothing stopping us when we have the Dunbat.
You guys sure have a lot of machines and vehicles down here. What makes this one so special?
It's the only transport that can go into the abyss without cracking like a can of soup.
If this is one of a kind, then how did they get the Ark down the abyss in the first place?
That's a good question. I suppose they did it the hard way and just walked.
Didn't realize that was an option. Kath, what's it like inside the Ark? Is it like a movie or virtual reality?
No, of course not. It's, like real life, but slightly better. Pleasant temperature, clean air, good weather.
So people in the Ark just walk around pretending it's the real world?
You don't have to pretend, it's perfectly immersive.
And it can just sustain itself?
Yes. Attached to a probe fueled by solar panels, it could survive for thousands of years.
That's amazing. Just thinking about the Earth being what it is and us setting out to save the final remains of humanity, it's...
Heroic?
At least it feels worth doing.
Here we go. The Dunbat. Ah, damn it. I knew it was too good to be true.
What's wrong?
It's quarantined. Hold on. We need a security cipher.
How bad is it?
It's we don't write these things down type of bad.
Maybe someone's still around who can tell us what it is.
Sure, let's go with that. I'll just unlock the other doors for you so you can explore the station. We need to find someone who knows the cipher. It's the only way to fire up the Dunbat. Find someone who knows the security cipher.
So just give me one quick second here. I was wondering, I think there's actually a Dunbat in Toronto, which seems like it would be a very weird... that'd be like a very weird and specific name. But I noticed there was someone who suggested that it stood for Deep Underwater Bathysphere, which probably sounds like a much more realistic. Site status: Theta, all systems operational. Hull, subcoat intact, approximately 99%. Armor intact, approximately 84%. Life support, wow. Air clean, medium. Temperature 13 degrees Celsius. Pressure 2.102 bar. Last diagnostics 2104, January 16th. Oh, should have waited waited a couple weeks.
Looks like all your friends moved downstairs.
Theta, Maine. Emma Alvaro, astrodynamics expert. Robin Bass, field service technician, deceased. Catherine Chun, Intel's systems engineer, missing. Dorian Kronstadt, administrative supervisor, deceased. Jessica Davis, structural engineer, deceased. Joaquin Defreen, Field Service Technician. Sean Evans, Field Service Technician. Martin Fisher, Wrangler, deceased. Keith, they said it before, Forquirin, Overseer. Matthew Frost, biomimetics expert. Jasper Hill, Software Coordinator, missing. Nikolai Ivashkin, Systems Architect, missing. Maggie Komaribi, First Responder. Guy Conrad, Wrangler, deceased. Alice Coster, Payload Manager. Sarah Lindwall, Payload Technician, missing. Nadine Masters, Medical Doctor. Ian Peterson, Software Engineer, missing. Imogen Reed, Mechatronics Engineer, missing. Mark Sarang, Intelligence Analyst, deceased. Peter Stratsky, Dispatcher. John Strohmeyer, Security Operative. Richard Thabo, Mechatronics Engineer. And Heather Wolchek, Site Service Engineer. Guests: Jane Adams, Chief Factor Upsilon. Mariska Daviel, Wrangler. Gavin Finley, I think is Field Service Technician, Upsilon, deceased. Javid Goya, Wrangler, Delta. Nathan Grau, Captain of Port. Lambda, deceased. Vanessa Hart, Dispatcher. Lambda. Vegas Jonsdottir, Dispatcher. Upsilon. Chris Josek, Lambda. Astrid Krier, FS Technician, deceased. Louise Muron, FST, Upsilon, deceased. Baxter Rogers, Geotechnical Engineer, Upsilon. Ashish Shankar, Wrangler, Upsilon. And Brandon Wan, Wrangler from Delta. There will be a quiz on all of those names in exactly 5 minutes.
Get it either. It's like they all just cleared out.
What's so interesting downstairs? Just labs and offices. Maybe the shuttle station.
Should we go check?
I'm gonna leave that barrier up until I'm good and ready.
Stuck on that one.
I'm just worried about my colleagues.
Oh God! Oh, never mind. God, no drinking water at all. Oh, here's the moment I was thinking of. Now, I don't know about you, but I, for one, am really looking forward to the And they woke up and it was all a dream ending. Wait a minute. I was in the ladies' washroom? Maybe it'll be like Deus Ex, and when we get to the Ark, they're gonna tell me off for going to the wrong. One of the really terrible traits that I have with movies nearly logical. So I'm gonna just head back to one of the other doors before I go too far in this area. One of the worst traits that I have is a tendency to come up with what I think are like some of the dumbest and most like kind of hackneyed approach. Weird bathrooms with no emergency lights. I mean, I don't want to see what's going on in there. I'm content to, you know, let it all remain in the dark and mysterious. But yeah, so like these are older movies, but like so they're okay. I still haven't seen the new Star Wars movies, but apparently like when I was is this the way to the Dunbat?
Thanks, Strohmeyer. That's a real helpful report. Be quiet. The proxy listens. What happened to Theta? No information is anywhere.
Kind of sounds like a warning.
I'm just gonna. My order of priorities. I'm gonna go to the scary basement last. But yeah, so apparently like the first one, I remember I just came up with a bunch of like stupid stuff that I was like, okay, yeah, this will make people laugh in terms of how ridiculous it is. And like one of the things I said, and then they make a super duper Death Star, which is even bigger than the last one, and so on and so forth. And apparently this is actually a thing that happens in that movie. And some people got quite cross at me for ruining it. And I'm like, I haven't seen it. I still haven't seen it. But you know, like I'm just trying to come up with what I thought would be very silly things that they would do. But I remember rather specifically it was some M. Night Shyamalan movie. I think it was The Village. And I remember within the first like minute or two of starting that movie, I was like, you know, if I wanted to come, because like he's known for doing like twisty endings, right? And sometimes the twist doesn't always really like pay off. So I was like, okay, so if I had to like, if I was, you know, the writer and I didn't do the required homework, right? Like we're minutes away from shooting and I haven't figured out how to end this thing. Here is like the super stupid, dumb twist ending I would put on this. And because I don't believe in like, you know, I know people get really worked up about...
When I started the art project, I pretty much lived in this lab.
Cozy.
People don't, like obviously, you know, people get very worked up about spoilers. I think maybe overly worked up about spoilers. And because I know that, you know, generally, like I'm not going to not talk about stuff, but you can have very good conversations about games and movies and things without necessarily talking about the endings. But like on the other hand, I'm not going to talk about Casablanca and the famous scene where Rick decides what he's going to do, right? Like that's... most people are going to be familiar with that because, you know, of every single, you know, cartoon that has lampooned that. But yeah, I mean, again, just because you didn't think it was a good movie doesn't mean that if somebody's going to feel like they were hard done by having the ending ruined for them. There's no point in throwing that out. But needless to say, I didn't think The Village was particularly worth it. And if you are inclined to thinking about the silliest or most like lazy finale possible, you're probably right. So don't, if it matters to you, don't spend too much time thinking about that sort of stuff. Yeah, Nick, so I believe that I've been dying to try and find this survey, but I believe you are actually consistent with the majority of readers. I think the majority of readers do check the ending. And I can see, especially for books, because you spend so much time reading them, you want to know if it's worth your time. So I know for me, like 1984, I wound up reading the final lines of 1984 before I ever read the whole book. I mean, that is obviously a very shocking and upsetting ending, but I didn't feel that, I didn't really feel like I had a lesser experience of 1984 being familiar. People being, I didn't feel like, I somehow was denied an experience that people who read it for the first time without seeing the end did. But I mean, again, it's a culture thing. I do, like I said, I don't try to tie myself into knots, but I do tend to find, the thing that bugs me is that when you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and somebody immediately announces, they put their fingers in their ears yelling, is like, no spoilers, no spoilers. I'm like, okay, well, you're the main character, we're going to bend everything around to, there are ways to respectfully say, I'm not going to tell you about the ending of The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, but it's a good movie. You should probably see it. And, if you've seen Mad Men, you've actually had you've had the story ending. Knives Out reference, I see. I haven't seen the newest one, by the way. There was a point I was going to make with all of this, but it's long since. I remember my favorite. It was all. So actually, the one thing that I do like now, because apparently I've developed something of a track record of being disappointed that my lazy ending is the one that they decide to go for. And don't get me wrong, these are professional writers. It is not easy to do satisfying endings. They are, in fact, very, very difficult. And they're doing creative works, and I am not. So also I need to mix a little water with the wine just to acknowledge where I am in the overall hierarchy. On the other hand, right, I'm also not being paid to do this sort of thing, so I suppose it's a different set of have a good dinner, nearly logical. There's a bit of give and take that you can give on this. But now I'm just trying to think of all the different ways that I can fit It Was All a Dream inside of it. My favorite by far was the finale for Succession, right? All of a sudden, the final dramatic moments of Succession, you hear Logan's voice, "You okay, son?" And he wakes up and he's in the bathroom from that pilot episode. "Looks like you hit your head pretty hard. It was all a dream." Roll credits. That's how it should have ended. Error code 06FF0A12, unable to connect to mainframe. Please reset the router in the sub-level vault or contact maintenance. Man, they really want me to go to the basement. I'll keep talking about movies and TV shows to avoid going to the basement. Well, the other thing, too, of course, is that the more expensive the project, the less individual control someone wields over a particular project. And so, I mean, obviously there are exceptions. There are, people who have a track record of delivering quite successful projects.
Where we store the ARC scans.
So you saved the whole staff digitally on these chips?
That was the plan.
Probably should just yank someone out of. But yeah, so if you have a track record of delivering commercially successful projects, then you have a little bit more leverage. But like the fact of the matter is, the amount of money that goes into this stuff, there are going to be people whose instincts are maybe not the best, who are getting final say on certain projects, and they are collaborative media. So in some cases, I would put it to you this way. I would not be surprised that if some of the writers of things that I did not think worked very well were also fully aware of that. Like for my... That's true. Although I will also say, like the great literary writers who worked in Hollywood didn't always produce the best stuff. There were, although again, there's some tremendous writing talent at all times in Hollywood. But yeah, one of the things that people learned about that experiment, not really experiment, but like was actually how the talent in one area didn't necessarily translate into screenwriting success. And you can kind of see why, right? Like you have some people like you have some people who have a gift for novel writing and playwriting, and then so maybe the step towards working for something like motion pictures isn't so hard. Although again, motion pictures by far are the most visual of all of those formats. And then there's like, a lot of Kubrick stuff, they're adaptations of books, but they're not necessarily like I think The Shining would maybe be an exception. Well, I guess, Barry Lyndon, it's like William Makepeace Thackeray isn't exactly like trash, but actually, no, the more I think about it, he really did actually, Lolita and Clockwork Orange. But I mean, some of those books, I mean, obviously not Lolita, but like for some of them, they became more popular because of the adaptations. So Kubrick's probably not the best example of that the more I think about it, but Hitchcock might be a better one. Although I guess Rebecca was also a really popular work. But the funny thing is there is a saying that like bad novels make good movies because the focus so much is on the there's actually a point to this game that I'm getting to as well, where crummy books can make for very good movies because there's a lot of focus on like the action and the visuals, and those aren't always the most interesting parts about the books that you can read. Whereas very good literature can be unfilmable because it takes place, entirely inside someone's mind, or there's basically very little that happens other than sort of in the internal world of the, the character. And obviously there are very good adaptations of this. So a fantastic example of this actually would be Charlie Kaufman's adaptation, right? The adaptation of The Orchid Thief, and it's very, it's very complex relationship both with its subject and itself. But yeah, for the most part. Sometimes very pulpy books actually make for good. So like I'd say that to a certain extent, some of my favorite literature probably would not make as good of a movie as something by Dan Brown, because Dan Brown, has a fairly easy to understand plot with lots of action in it. Whereas, if I'm like Finnegan's Wake is that's just being mean, but like, clearly Finnegan's Wake is not really going to work as a movie. You think sometimes conflicting agendas can cause writing to be lacking? Directors and producers might insist on a change to the script that wasn't the screenwriter's preference, but for sure. And I mean that the direction can come from all sides, but I think in general the writer has fewer. Well, actually, you know what? Probably there are some writers who wind up as showrunners who probably have a little bit more influence. So TV might have brought a bit of a change in that, but no, for the most part, you're right. On TV series for a very long time, I always knew the director of photography was really the one running the show. Oh yeah, this was the other thing I was going to say. People really like pointing out movie goofs. I can tell you for sure that there is a binder somewhere with the like masters or whatever for the film. I don't even know what they call them now, but I'd assume masters. But The script supervisor always makes notes of the continuity errors. Like, that's their job. I've never seen I've never seen somebody miss the continuity error. But I have seen lots of times where, someone higher up says, "I don't care, we're moving on." Now, on the other hand, we do still have things like Starbucks cups in Game of Thrones. So I'm not saying mistakes don't happen on sets. Again, it's just one of these things where I think probably there is someone who is fully aware of what has happened, where people just kind of assume that there's a lot more incompetence than there really is. Okay, let me just catch up with chat really quick, because like I said, there was going to be somewhere I was going with this, and I moved past the point a little bit, but I don't mind moving back to it. Best movie adaptation for me of a book was Princess Bride. Yeah, William Goldman did both. It's a very, very well done one. I've actually never read the novelization. Well, I guess it isn't a novelization, but I have read William Goldman's books on screenwriting, and I really like Marathon Man, and there's another one of his that I really like that escapes me right now, but I've never subscribed to Netflix Index now. I've seen a few Netflix shows sort of when other people have let me watch them, but I actually really haven't seen it. There's certainly no lack of talent, but whether or not the money is being directed to the talent is another question. And that would be an interesting one, Quinn Gold. I actually am curious what the right situation for that would be, because that's not exactly like, it's a well-known author, but it's not like Philip K. Dick, where you have to like basically, sell everything you own to be able to have a chance to, to do an adaptation. But yeah, I was talking about Inner Life. So this is one of the things that I think is kind of neat about a game like Soma, where
my scan and all the others, I suppose.
You don't remember?
My scan was the first. Had to test the scanner before I could start making promises.
I do feel a little bad that I'm breaking up this story of the scans, because I think this is really interesting stuff. But so if you think a little bit about so you think about what you get from a book, and then you sort of think what you get from a film, and then you can think about what you get from a game. So I did write an article on this. It probably wasn't a very good one, but one of the examples that I sort of took is that one thing that a movie can do that a game can't is that a movie can force your perspective. Right? So I know sometimes games turn into movies, and like they'll force you to look at a certain way, but like there's a really famous shot in Rosemary's Baby where like imagine there's somebody in this chair on a phone call, and the way that it's sort of framed is kind of like this. I could frame this a little bit better, or maybe it would be like so. Anyways, it's just you would almost imagine that it's a mistake because you can't actually see the person on the phone talking, except that in the theater, when people watched it, every single person in the theater kind of leaned over to the edge to try and see around the door. So this is a great example of people being very immersed in a film. And that doesn't really happen in games because, of course, you're the person who controls things. Like, you can play with perspective. The games like Layers of Fear do this quite well. But games don't really or shouldn't, in my opinion, force the perspective in the same way films do, because the interactivity is the thing that makes this so interesting. But you'd almost imagine that games would have sort of the same problem as books in terms of representing, internal life or something like that. But they're actually very well suited to it, it turns out. So Cultist Simulator and Book of Hours are the obvious options here, right? You have these representations of the world as different cards, and you're sort of piecing things together. So it's that same feeling that you get when you're listening to a radio play or reading a book and putting pieces together. But you also have a game like Soma, right? I have heard in the past some people kind of accuse this of being on rails and basically something that should have been a movie. But we've sort of talked a couple of times, even on this playthrough, about how, you're given the stun gun and you've been introduced to this idea that, it is possible to transfer consciousness to some of these robot bodies. And you have the cute little robot, which does not have the possibility for a personality to be transferred into it. And then you have a robot that seems to be not altogether there, but definitely has its operator inside of it. And you have that moment. So first of all, there's the question in terms of whether or not you bothered or were or were interested or discovered that information. But assuming that you have and you've been paying attention to the story, you have this whole process that goes on in your mind about which one you want to take out. Both are going to be horrible, and Frictional does such a good job with the other one to really make you feel like a scumbag for taking out that worker bot. Because I think they kind of knew that people would like the helper a bit more. But in that case, all of that to me, I think is something that's being added. So again, I don't rate too much the idea that you can have multiple endings. And I don't necessarily mind that, there's a door over here that I can't open and I'm like, oh, this game's on rails and it's forcing me. Because what it does is it gives me a lot to think about. And there are these very small moments where I wind up in the same place, but there is actually that process I have in my head about deciding, which of these two things am I going to exterminate? What kind of person am I? And it's I'm not going to cry myself to sleep at night over what I did to the worker, but I do feel bad about it. And I really think that is something that can often be missed in game narratives, although some of the best game narratives really do actually take advantage of that input to give the game a little bit more life inside the player's head. But I think the other thing about this is it's also very subtle. I think we're probably less aware. So when you watch something like Mad Men's a really good example of a series where you can really notice you're able to get special meaning from looking at shots. So you'll see Don Draper looking at all the ads and he sees he sees a certain name on the all of the posters, and it just happens to be that his idea and the other writer's idea are sort of in competition, and so he leaves one of those inside of the cab. You don't necessarily need to have really paid attention to those shots, but if you're paying attention to the game, or to the movie rather, the TV show, obviously you're gaining a certain amount of information about why he's doing certain things, and there are some episodes where it's very satisfying to pick up on those things. And again, I'm not trying to suggest that it's some huge cipher that you need to understand, but you get something a little bit more out of it, right? There are certain things about a character's internal state that are being represented specifically by a close-up or the presence of something inside of a shot. And I think for the most part we're quite good at registering that now because we've had such a long period of time to watch movies, whereas right now with games, I know there's a lot of opinions about them, and there's a lot of opinions about what is a good game or isn't. So, the idea that maybe you shouldn't have so many cinematics is definitely a very common feeling in, among certain types of game developers and certain types of players. Now, whether or not that's the right way to think about it is a whole other question. But it's the sort of thing that you can imagine someone believing without thinking very carefully about it. But thinking a little bit about even just little moments where you choose between one of two characters, even though you wind up in the same place, that does actually sometimes have quite a bit of influence on how someone is thinking about who the character that they're playing is and how they just generally feel about the game and their decisions. And for my own part, I actually go one step further and say, I would love to see the telemetry of a lot of games like this, because I think that there are ways that you can actually get some information in terms of, what the player is thinking of, give that back to the designers and let them sort of know whether or not some of their ideas are working the way that they think they are. Anyways, I'm sorry I'm monologuing so much, but this is stuff that excites me. Eric says, read The Princess Bride in high school, got in trouble with the librarian because you were laughing so hard. That reminds me a little bit of Hitchhiker's Guide, although I was mostly laughing at home, so people were wondering what was going on. Fast forward to when you were in college, the movie came out, and you had low expectations, but when you heard the word, hello, my name is Inigo Montoya, I was sold. Excellent. I obviously only saw it on DVD or Blu-ray or something, but it's a very memorable movie. And Quinn says, kind of like watching people on Twitch play games and trying to click on stuff in their stream videos. You're not going to admit how many times you went to do that and then thought, oops, I'm not in the game. I mean, it's an indication of a very good game.
Ah, I see.
What?
Check the terminal. I just want to make sure.
The Nanami composition, type compressed Nakajima neurograph, continuous time 21 milliseconds, captured March 12th, 2014. Author Nakajima Shin, subject name Nanami, sex female, birth December 11th, 1997, death July 17th, 2021, nationality Japanese. Berg. Well, we know where this is going. The pace files Berg. Type compressed Nakajima neurograph, continuous time 6 milliseconds, captured April 28th, 2015. Author David Munshi, subject Paul Berg, sex male, birth November 27th, 1984, death 2nd of August 2069, nationality Canadian. Munshi.
Munshi. How did this... What is this?
Compressed Nakajima neurograph, continuous time 4 milliseconds, captured 28th of April 2015. Author Paul Berg, subject David Munshi, sex male, birth October 4th, 1980, death May 23rd, 2078, nationality Canadian, and...
Kath, what is this? Why do you have a file of me?
You are one of Dr. Munshi's templates. The legacy scan.
Paste file Simon Jarrett, type compressed Nakajima neurograph, continuous time 5 milliseconds, captured the 2nd of May 2015. Author David Munshi, subject Simon Jarrett, sex male, birth July 16th, 1988, death June the 1st, 2015, nationality Canadian. Incidentally, my birthday is July 15th, so I was feeling a little nervous when I played this. Not 1988 birth year though.
Okay, that's it.
Wow, that was fun.
That's a relief. Still figuring this out, so...
This is freaky. So many lights. What do we do now?
Paul and I are going to run tests for a week or so, and then we'll work out a roadmap to your recovery.
Well, I feel excited. Can't wait to get back to the living.
We've worked everything out. Everything is legal. Vouched for by Dr. Peak and Professor Wei.
Oh, that's great news.
No big change in medication. You'll be taking an aspirin every morning, but that's about it. Paul worked out a diet with some variations you should try out. You can continue doing physical therapy. Also, there's some extra cardio training every other day.
Okay, getting complicated.
Don't worry, it's really not. We're going to keep an eye on you every week, so we'll be able to adjust the plan if needed. The model was sound. It should have worked.
It's not your fault, David.
I really wish things had turned out differently.
Yeah, me too.
I was supposed to save you.
Hey, you got my brain on file. Maybe you can put it to some use.
Yeah, who knows? You'd be okay with that? Using it for my research?
Sure. It's like a part of me lives on or something. Like a donated organ. You know what sucks about dying?
What?
The crash. Everything up till now. The brain damage. You guys, everything. Has made my life so much more real. I started thinking about all the things I was going to do. I'd never been more excited to be alive. All that hope.
wasted.
What's a legacy scan?
They're historic templates for AI construction. Any self-respecting engineer wouldn't use legacies anymore, but they're great for learning. They come with every development kit.
So, my brain scan turned into a template for artificial intelligence.
You should be proud.
So much for that mystery. No magic or time travel needed. I was here all along, waiting for someone to shove a picture of my brain into a suit and hit the power button.
I will confess, there is a side of me that I like about this, just the idea. Like, this I think is such a great way of answering the question, why Simon? Like, to a certain extent, right, you know, it's Simon because, I guess this is kind of a variation on the anthropic principle, right? So, why Earth, why us? It's like, well, you know, we wouldn't be here to ask the question if it wasn't, right? Which doesn't really seem to be answering the question, really. But, like, you know, there's only so far you can go with this stuff. But in the case of, you know, why Simon? Like, why this particular person? Well, again, you can always say, well, because it's a game, right? You know, somebody's going to have to experience this, and you're the, you know, we didn't make a game about the people who didn't make it. We made a game about the person who did make it. So that's, you know, that's why you're here, dummy. But there is always that, like, so if you think about how we know certain things about the ancient world, some of the texts that have been preserved, you know, it's not always the perfectly preserved writings of great scholars that have been passed down to us. Sometimes we will find certain works because they are very well preserved at the bottom of a garbage pile. Or, you know, we know certain things about certain thinkers, not because those things survived, but rather because the you know, people took the time to refute what they were saying. So, like, Sextus Empiricus would be an example of that, where he's putting a number of different refutations. Lots of Christian writers, you know, talking about how terrible those atheistic Epicureans are. And that's, you know, going to be part of what we know, simply because, and again, like, you have to adjust the source accordingly. But again, if you're in a group that's going to potentially have your writing suppressed, sometimes the way that the knowledge is transmitted is ultimately through the people criticizing you. Hello, Jay the Belgian. How are you doing tonight? So there's just something kind of fun about the idea that, you know, it's not like, to a certain extent, it's such a very mundane way of Simon making it to this period, but it's that basically because he happened to be this guy who was an early scan, and because he had agreed to have it be used as you know, as a research project, essentially, you know, the fact that you just wound up as the dev kit, you know, the dev kit model, that just happened to be the conditions under which he survived. Not necessarily because he was special in any other way, just he was somebody who was doing an experimental, you know, experimental procedure, which I think is I just think that's a nice way of solving that. They didn't need to do that, but I think they did I think that's just I think it's a nice way that they handled that. As much as I can, Jay the Belgian. I mean, it's definitely a very thoughtful game, and I think some of the fun of playing games like this is your reaction to it and how you respond. I have played a little bit of the Talos Principle. I haven't played all of it, but that is a really, really wonderful game, because I know that one has very similar themes in terms of what is human and I mean, essentially also a very similar story of sort of human extinction, actually. and an effort to try and preserve what makes us human. So I don't have Talos Principle 2, but I do have the Talos Principle, and I think Jonas Karatsis, I'm very bad at pronouncing his name, but I think he's quite a talented writer. I don't believe he's ever done any writing for Weather Factory, but I know he definitely stood up for Weather Factory at a time where that was actually, I think, personally costly to him. But I do know that he helped with The Locksmith's Dream with a little bit of writing, and then I think he also contributed some writing to Phoenix Point. I really should do more Talos Principle at some point. But yeah, no, I think some of the fun, so whether it's Talos Principle, whether it's this game, some of the fun is just being able to talk about your reaction to it and trying to, as far as you can, engage with the themes. I mean, the thing is that this is a very well done game, and so sometimes the challenge can be, I'm not particularly well read in philosophy. I certainly know more of the classical stuff than I do a lot of what would be dealt with on this. So I know almost nothing about cognitive science. I read like a little bit of Daniel Dennett, but that's about it. And certainly the stuff that I sort of found interesting would generally sort of fall under ethics. So, whether it's political philosophy or ethics writ large. And that can be very different from, and I mean, again, I actually took relatively few. I did want to take more philosophy courses, but I found the one that I signed up for that was a 300 level course. I mean, all of these would have been electives anyway, but the higher level course that I did go for, there's a participant that was just so obnoxious and constantly made the conversations about themselves to a point that, like, they would take up all of the class time and the prof would never, would declare closure, but every single class, it was always this person that would get that time. It was so frustrating that I basically just kept the textbook, dropped the class where I could, and then moved on. So, in the end, it's wonderful to just be able to sit down and read this stuff on your own. But in the end, there's only so far that you can go. And, I kind of have the Simon Jarrett version of let's say a political philosophy text. It's the one that was assigned at the university that I went to. And, maybe that's not the one that will give me a full understanding. And I know about Daniel Dennett because he looks like Santa Claus. So, maybe he's not the only person writing on these topics. So, it was a her, actually, and I did respectfully send a message to the prof, saying, I'm interested in this course, but I am finding it quite difficult. Like, I would like to participate in these discussions, and I am finding it very difficult with the current dynamic of the class. Would it be possible to make sure that there is, maybe a little bit more even time, dedicated to the discussion? But yeah, I mean, either they didn't care. I never actually got a direct response to the email. Either they didn't care, or I did kind of detect that they tried to angle the conversation a little way, but the student barreled through. So I don't know if they just didn't care or they just wanted to encourage it or whatever. But there were going to be more courses that I wanted to take than I was going to be able to, and there's just not enough time. Like, why reward that kind of behavior, right? So I just, like I said, I kept the textbook, dropped the class. It was easy enough to find a replacement, and I feel like I had a better education for it.
Strasky, come in. I need help in the lab, the scan room.
What happened?
Conrad killed himself after the scan.
Jesus, how?
Maser tool? What should I do?
I'm gonna need to tell Strohmeyer.
No, please! I'm so close. Strohmeyer's gonna shut down the art project. It's not my fault people keep killing themselves.
Catherine, what are you gonna do? It's not like you can sneak a 300-pound body out of the lab.
I know.
Catherine, are you okay?
Not even close.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't even think it's bad. Like, where possible, you do want to be able to hear positions that are different from your own, right? Particularly in university. I mean, that's the whole point you go, right? It's if you want to just hear people tell you things that you want to hear, you've got YouTube for that. But I don't know, like I remember sometimes some of the more rewarding discussions in other classes that I took would just be, you go outside of class and you talk about the stuff that you're interested in. And like, obviously there are some people who are there because their parents want them to be, or they're just looking for a piece of paper, and that's fine. You just don't spend the time on that. But if you have other people who are interested in the topics that you're talking about, then you have a conversation with them. And if the class isn't giving you the time for that, then you make that time with other people who are interested. On the other hand, there's limits to that, right? Because if someone is sucking all the oxygen out of the room in terms of being able to engage with the material in class, at that point, you really don't have fuel for the fire to satisfy Kieran's little inferno request. In the end, if someone has taken away everything that you can get out of that course, then it's not going to be as satisfying, just because in the end you don't have the same material. And I mean, again, if in the end you're doing that much work to get the experience yourself, perhaps that's a big indicator that you should. You really should be considering another experience. But I mean, it is what it. There's definitely some benefits from the classroom learning, but one of the things, of course, that you're picking up out of university is just the ability to go and feel like you're like, it's not like you go to university and then you learn all the stuff that you're. Thought I heard a noise.
The legacy scan of me that was on the computer. What did you use it for?
It's a template that has an intelligence pathwork already etched into the base. So if I wanted to build an AI, I wouldn't have to reinvent a whole model. I would be able to focus on the things that the AI is to be used for.
Is every AI self-aware? Do they also think they're Simon?
What? No, Simon. Don't worry. It's not like we just put people into robots and machinery and let them roam free. That'd be really cruel. It doesn't work like that. Or at least it didn't used to work like that. Truly sentient machines thinking they're people is definitely new.
But you kept them sentient for the Ark.
Yes, and I basically had to invent the method.
But yeah, like, obviously the reason you go to university is not that you like learn all the things you're ever going to need to know. You learn the process through which you can acquire more knowledge. And so, if you're in that unfortunate situation where you have someone who's sort of spoiling the experience for everyone else, that's just an opportunity to learn the qualities that that you'll use to take more or to get more knowledge later. Or that's the ideal, at least. I mean, again, everybody's experience at university is different, and people have different reasons for going to university.
So, you're not worried that there are other Simons or Catherines running around out there?
Now I am. Geez, Simon, some thoughts are better left alone.
If I'm reading that correctly, that's the character who'd killed himself in Catherine's lab, and the schematic, I think, with the modifications he made to make the tool lethal.
I wonder what the real Simon would have thought if he knew about me.
What do you mean? You do know about yourself.
No, I mean the real Simon. The human Simon.
Going by your reactions, I'd say he'd be pretty upset.
Oh. Time to pick up heavy things and put them down again.
I seriously doubt you'll find anything useful in there.
What are you talking about? This is useful. You graduated in industrial electromechanics. Makes it so much easier to understand machines and learn by yourself and get a deep understanding of what you're doing and why, but studies in itself doesn't make you competent at all. Yeah, well, it's just, I mean, the example I always like taking, because this is one of the challenges I run into at work. At work, I am considered a good programmer, but I also understand by the standards of programmers, and I'm saying this with full...
We'll get by.
with full knowledge of index gnome and nearly logical both in the chat. I am fully aware of the dangers of applying that title to myself. But yeah, I know enough about programming to know that I would be easily the worst programmer at any proper software shop. I like how she really nags you not to search the room. Aha! No, maybe not.
Come on, no need to go through all my stuff.
But yeah, I take the example, right, like there's a lot of, I noticed that at work, there's a lot of attention on a programming language. You have to learn a programming language, and that will make you a programmer. And obviously, that's really not the way to think about it, right? It's not like, the computer science professors, they learn the one language at, they learn the one language in university. And, they were the lucky one because that one kept being used up until, throughout their career. And the unlucky ones were the ones, who wound up picking, something that didn't really catch on. All the intercal programmers, they died out. They didn't get tenure. But no, like, obviously, the programming language part is really not that big of a deal. It's more about how do you think about solving problems? How do you structure a program in such a way that it's easy to maintain, that, a reasonably thoughtful outsider could take a look at what you're doing and, and sort of understand the intent and be able to, to fix it when things go wrong. And ideally, make it so that it doesn't have problems in the first place. But yeah, I mean, obviously that's hard, right? Like, it's kind of like astronomy, right? So if you see a scientist like looking into a telescope, I guess now you'd look at a screen, but like, if you're back in, Newton's era, you're seeing somebody like stare into a telescope, you're like, oh, okay, so astronomy is all about looking into telescopes. Well, no, obviously what that is one part of the job. But that's about collecting data that will allow you to do the thing that that astronomy really is. But as from an external point of view, if you don't have sort of the foundations, it's easy to see how staring at a telescope could be mistaken for astronomy. I've looked at a telescope, but I'm certainly not a learned astronomer. June 6, 2103. Imogen Reed was tested a machine today. It was clearly corrupted by WoW, but more importantly, it was assembled in a seemingly primitive way, like someone had specifically created it for WoW to steal. When activated, the machine mimicked the room and Reed along with it. At some point, she was scanned and then loaded as a simulation inside the digital space. The presentation shocked Reed and was quickly terminated. It scares me how much it reminds me of my AR capsule. June 14th, 2103. After dissecting the vivarium machine that Reed activated, it's clear that WoW copied my capsule project to construct the scene to hold the Reed simulation. It's actually very similar in its construction, except for one point. Where my capsule houses flat people constructed from model neurographs, the vivarium's brain scan lives on. It isn't limited by its content. From the originating brain scan, Reed emerged. The Reed inside the vivarium was a perfect copy. June 21st, 2103. I have it. I can save humanity. I can build an artificial reality capable capsule that can hold every living member of Pathos 2. I can't figure out how it worked with the vivarium, but I can replace WoW's scanning technique using the pilot seats. They're already prepared with the type of electromagnetic drums needed. June 22nd. It's easier than I thought. The pilot seats are already set to allow the diffraction and high energy needed to capture the scan. I suspect WoW has been using the seat to steal scans from us for a while. I guess that explains the mockingbirds. The WoW must have stolen scans from people using the pilot seat and used it as a basis for intelligence in the machines. With a surprisingly positive reaction from the team, we have now officially started the ARC project. We are to scan all the people we can find and load them into the capsule. Then we will launch it into space using the space gun. It's nice to think that something will live on like that. July 12th. Mark Saran killed himself after his scan. He has been suggesting everyone should kill themselves, as it would somehow allow them to actually get on the Ark. I'm not sure how that would work. It did trigger a lot of arguments among the staff, and apparently it's my fault somehow. Strohmeyer is not happy with me. Hope it will calm down. AR capsule. Richard gave me a set of AI templates I haven't seen before. I unfolded one of them to make a new friend for Capsule Catherine and her gang of legacies. New way to simulate turbulence makes the weather system so much better. Implemented Reed, didn't go well. New try with Reed. Reed won't play nicely with the others. She is too real. You know, the really funny thing about this, Jay, I agree. I do not... I could not see myself following the kind of the teachings of the continuity, but one very odd thing that happened to me over the course of playing this game was I went from being completely horrified and thinking that what happened was the most tragic, thinking what was being described was just the most tragic mistake I could imagine, to actually having a lot of sympathy for the continuity perspective, if that makes sense. So like my feeling has always been, like, I think everybody's kind of had the thought of the, what happens if my consciousness is uploaded to the Matrix or whatever, or some variation on that. And I've always kind of accepted that in that scenario, I am guaranteed to die. Like, the only way under which I can really avoid that is, some kind of medicine or some kind of medical breakthrough that allows sort of the flesh and blood to sort of carry on. That the consciousness that I have is going to experience death. And I mean, even then, even with protracted lifespans, right, there are sort of, at least to our understanding, definite limits to the type of life that we have right now. In the end, there's going to be some sort of termination point, and the conditions are really the question. So to a certain extent, I guess I felt a little indifferent about the preservation of the consciousness, because in the end, like, from the pure benefit for myself of, like, well, so I mean, I guess there's the first question, I suppose maybe that's a good question in terms of, making sure your priorities are right, are you living the sort of life? I think this is actually in Nietzsche at some point, like the idea of eternal recurrence, that, if some spirit came down and told you that you would be made to live every single moment of your life over again, would they be some terrible demon, declaring a curse on you, or would you sort of go on your knees and worship it as this great angel that had given you the best news ever? Similarly with, I suppose you'd say, well, would you want to live forever? And, I suppose an immediate question is, if the answer is no, why aren't you living the kind of life that you would want to live forever? But on the other hand, I think maybe I'm just not so, especially given that I kind of have this idea that I know the consciousness I have is going to end at some point. I do sometimes wonder, am I really enough of an egomaniac to say, oh, humanity requires my consciousness be preserved for, for all time. Upload me to the cloud, and I mean, to a certain extent, I think sometimes this is what you're getting in terms of ghost stories, right? Like, I should maybe check to see whether or not there have been some good AI ghost stories written with these very, long-term, these people trying to. There's other ways you can do this too, right? Like, apparently there's a problem when people are making wills, and like lawyers kind of need to explain, you're trying to control the world after you're gone, and that's not really what this is about. So in the end, I'm sorry, I'm really going off on tangents here, but like, I've never felt too strongly about the what if I upload my consciousness and that was an option sort of idea here. And so as a result, the continuity, the idea of the continuity was something that was sort of alien to me. But the more I sort of thought about it, the more I got this idea that it's like, yeah, the death would be experienced, but the only thing sort of experiencing your life is your scan. And that's what makes that unique. That's what makes that continuous. I eventually started to maybe get a little bit more sympathy and appreciation for that particular way of that way of thinking. Like I said, I'm not convinced, but like I stopped thinking that the people being described were just, complete maniacs who weren't thinking it through. The more I tried to sort of like make it, the old debate tactic, right, where you take the time to try and think of the best way to put your opponent's argument so that you can break it down. Once I started doing that, I actually found it harder and harder for me to sort of say, this is completely irredeemable as a point of view. I actually still haven't seen Zima Blue. I have seen some Love, Death, and Robots. But I mean, this is I really like it when chat kind of gets like this, because the thing that is so nice about this, right, is that this is exactly what good science fiction is supposed to do, right? It gets you thinking about these kinds of topics, and it puts it in a nice format so that you are able to extract maybe the things that are very specific to your time and place, and to give you a different perspective to try and think a little bit about what's really at stake at the bottom of it. 300-year lifespan would wreck the economy. Forget being able to buy a house before you hit the age of 150. Well, yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to see a shift in terms of it. I mean, I do see the problem you're talking about. Canada actually is dealing with a huge housing problem right now. I have to imagine that there would be that there are better housing policies you can adopt, though, right? Like I'm not quite interested in I don't know, housing Malthusianism. I didn't know Zima Blue was season 1. I thought that was from the second season. But no, I see the point. Like I'm not a homeowner. I probably will be one at some point in my life, but definitely I'm not going to be on track to having a place that's, on the time scale of, my parents, that's for sure. Questions about the self. Who are you? What does it mean to be human? Does your body or your surroundings confine or define you? All very difficult ideas to approach without having your questions be invalidated by the practical or mystified by the spiritually minded. In this book, Pavlina Martinu, professor of philosophy at the Charles University in Prague, guides you through the history of great thinkers and what they have to say about identity. Classified, Mark Sarang, Intelligence Analyst, Theta, Pathos 2. Mr. Sarang, the company is very pleased to hear about your success in making the WoW a station-wide presence. We trust you appreciate what a unique opportunity this is, and that you will do everything in your power to fully explore and understand this mystery. To do so, you need to ensure that Dr. Johan Ross is able to steer and study the WoW from Alpha without outside interference. In case of an emergency, you may direct Julia Dahl at Omicron to forcefully eliminate any opposition, but please make an effort to avoid extreme actions. The WoW is an important, costly affair, and we hope to follow a steady development without setbacks. Supervisory Board. With any consolation, didn't buy your first house till 40. Fair. Yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not planning on, like, being a homeowner at, like, 80 or something like that. I may not even make it to 80, but... it isn't mentioned directly, but we did talk about this on Christmas, actually, in the first part, Charles. So, sorry, sorry, I don't have anything specific to bring up, but it's yeah, I actually tend to notice that this game, to its credit, very rarely avoids a direct mention of any kind of philosophical thought experiments, or any philosophers, writers, anything along those lines. I actually really respect the fact that the game largely, like, if you're familiar with this stuff, you get to talk about it, and, you know, usually chat knows a bit more about this stuff than I do, so it's always nice to sort of pick up a few things that either I missed or some perspectives that I hadn't thought of before. But I think in general, the game tends to just let you, if you know, and you can talk about that if you're interested. But I don't think it sits down. It's not like Deus Ex. Deus Ex is a wonderful game, but like Deus Ex is kind of like sitting down on the bus beside, you know, a guy who's really into conspiracy theories, and then you learn why that seat was available. And in this case, the game sort of stands on its own merits, and you know, it doesn't draw attention to the types of readings that I'm almost certain the team was probably thinking about when they made this. Dear friends, when you read this, I will have entered the Ark. As I've explained, this is accomplished by ceasing to live as your scan is being completed. To not frighten Catherine, I will do this in secret by folding cyanide salts into chewing gum and placing it in my mouth before seeing her. When I hear her announce completion, I will bite down, quickly causing my own demise. When you discover the truth behind my death, know there's no tragedy to mourn, for I am victorious. I advise you all to do the same and join me inside the Ark. Sincerely, Mark Sarang. A houseboat.
Did you know that the human body consists of up to 75 trillion individual cells? They typically don't stay with us till we die. Some live a few days, while others live a few years. We're not affected by their short lifespans, as they're replaced by new cells which help sustain our bodies.
Here's your ship of Theseus,
I don't
Charles.
think anyone would argue that we ever lose our persona due to this process. Yet we are clearly in a constant state of transformation. Then how do we remain the same? A continuous flow of thought and perception keeps an unbroken chain of continuity that we know as our self. Our conscious mind is not the pattern of our brain, but a continuous emergent entity based on that pattern. When Dr. Chun populates the Ark, she is capturing a moment of our existence and placing it inside the digital world. Soon you and your digital you will grow apart due to diverging experiences, but for a tiny window, you are the very same. With unbroken continuity, it will live on. A fulfilling life, no doubt, no less real than the one from which it was plucked. Now remember, you are not your body. You are the emergent entity. That entity just happens to occupy 2 places at once for a while. If you took away your body, you would simply be the only one you can be. The you inside the Ark. Let your body die and continue on in the digital paradise among the stars.
I think that would... No, we've got one more. We've got Robin Bass. Oh, 2 more. Wow. Yeah, there's one of the ones I talked about. I think this is from Derek Parfit, but like there's one of the thought experiments that I always kind of liked for this one was the, and again, it's terrible because I haven't really watched that much Star Trek, but the one where basically you have sort of the teleportation beam, and then you sort of say, okay, so have you successfully, you're deatomized and then reassembled. Mr. Murderer, you missed one. And so have you effectively just killed yourself by using this teleporter or not? Would you consider to transfer your mind to physical body, but transferring in a simulation that's pointless? You can't interact with the world or anything. What if you freeze, stuck for thousands of years? Yeah, I mean, so the really interesting thing about this one is, and again, this is why this game is so really well done, is the people in this world seem to actually be completely fine with the idea of Ark as some form of preservation in terms of humanity. And I mean, again, there's a few different variations of this argument, right? Are you less of yourself, if you lose a finger? What if you lose an arm? Or hello, Ionix. You can kind of keep going, and I think most people are not going to be comfortable drawing any particular line, right? Like once you lose 80% of your body, like is RoboCop human? I suppose to be the other one, the postmodern Frankenstein. Postmodern Prometheus, Frankenstein. Or Frankenstein's monster for the pedants in chat. I know you're there. But yeah, it's kind of interesting on this one here that the digital copies are interesting. The Ark is like as if yeah, so I know Socrates never wrote, but I know what you're saying, that basically the thinkers, if these thinkers had never been picked up. Interesting. I need to take a minute to think on that, because like I don't have, like, I am kind of appreciating, because I am actually making an effort to exercise a bit more. I can't fully disconnect from that physical side of me, right? So, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be happier on some days. I'm going to be unhappy on other ones. And sometimes that is going to be a function of my physical self. And I was talking about that at the start of the stream, really. And I do kind of appreciate, I'm really not one of these people who's like into exercise. But, if I, I do grudgingly admit, right, like when you are sort of active and going, that does bring about a change in mood, sometimes change of perception. And so it would be wrong for me to, to say, oh yeah, the digital scan is 100% identical. On the other hand, though, right, like if I lost sensations or I had some kind of an accident that would change my ability to do that, I don't necessarily think, again, I'm a little bit like, was it Mark Sarang? But now, of course, the drawback here is that his logic says, you need to exterminate yourself before you have enough divergence of these two experiences. So the idea here would just simply be that it's just a different stage of your life, right? The same way that you don't experience the world the same way as when you're a toddler, as when you're an adolescent or an adult or an old person. I realize there's a couple stages in between, but... But yeah, in terms of most of the characters here, I think their idea is that they are consciousness. They are the last remnants of humanity. They just aren't in living a flesh and blood existence anymore. And the question for the individuals in these cases are they essentially kind of flipping a coin to decide, is the consciousness that goes up into the arc the one that I'm going to be perceiving, or the one that I'm, the person who wakes up in the scanning chair? And then for the people who say, I'm going to wake up in the scanning chair, it's like I'm going to force the choice by ending my life at the moment the scan's complete. Yeah, I mean, the arc is the really interesting part of this, Quinn Gold, because obviously there's other people we're encountering which are sort of running around experiencing the world a little bit more like, I would associate with my day-to-day, not that I walk around underwater. Whereas the arc seems to be quite a bit more static, although there is a lot more... Again, they talk about the simulation and the idea that, everything that you experience basically feels like real world. Fully digital life is interesting. It's just think how nice it would be to put your partner on mute for a few hours. Sounds like a Black Mirror episode. We're all dying anyway. I'm all in. I put my faith in Sarang and the continuity. I could imagine there'd be a really nasty little scare you can give someone by having something appear in the reflection here, but... How you doing, Lord Gloom? We've actually had a few streamers come in, so I'm just going to tab out really quickly so that I can give a proper accounting. So we had Bionic Beans stop by, who just enjoyed their very first broadcast. We had Vesper Fortune VT in a little bit earlier. That's somebody who I found through Book of Hours, who actually most recently saw us streaming the old General Electric commercial / stop motion animation film Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And I believe that brings us to Lord Gloom, who would normally be seeing me play Cobalt Core right now, which is the game that I found them through, but I did do Soma on Christmas. I'm probably not going to have enough time to be able to finish this game tonight, but I have enjoyed talking about the ideas in the game with everyone, and I don't necessarily see that being a bad use of the time. Oh yes, and of course, Lord Gloom isn't just a Cobalt Core streamer, but actually has been doing a lot of Tarkov lately. So thank you for mentioning Tarkov, because I don't know, you're always going to be the Cobalt Core streamer to me. You haven't been streaming Book of Hours, have you, Charles? And if you want, I'm happy to try and step you through any blocks, but I imagine you'll probably want to sort those out for yourself. So please consider that to be an offer, but not an expectation. I don't know how you feel about scary games or narrative. I really don't like calling this a horror game because it does have horror elements in it, but I first and foremost think of this as a very good science fiction game with horror elements as opposed to it being a horror game. So like the majority of this game is not actually being chased down halls by monsters. Yeah, no worries, Charles. And I definitely don't mind, like, I have noticed, and I think I actually really like it when people are kind of respectful about this, because I do understand in some cases that this can be off-putting to some broadcasters, but for my own part, I actually don't mind, especially because so much of my stuff is associated with the Weather Factory games. When people come in and say, you know, hey, I like your Cultist Simulator, your Book of Hours videos on YouTube, I'm stuck on this one part. Like, I definitely get that some streamers get quite touchy about people talking about the other game, but my own feeling on this is that I cannot take, the goods, the attention that Weather Factory have given me, the benefit of people finding me through that stuff, I don't feel like I can take the pluses of that and then like get mean to people when they ask another game. Like, obviously, if the other game like gets completely, it's like the philosophy class that we were talking about before. If all the oxygen for the game is pulled out because I'm only talking about Book of Hours, then okay, right? Maybe I'll say we should table it and have a conversation offline. But for the most part, I do. It's a chance to be a nice ambassador for Weather Factory. And like, obviously Weather Factory paid me for the Steam stuff and all of that. Like, I don't want to be groveling for them, but let's face it, there are bigger streamers who have played their games and brought attention to their stuff, and I think it's very nice that they have continued to maintain that relationship, because most of the people that I've had some kind of relationship with dump me once they reach a certain size. This is my second run, Jay. So I've definitely seen the ending, although there are a few people who haven't seen this game before, so I'm trying to be a little coy about where some of this goes. For what it's worth, Amnesia, this is by the same people who did Amnesia, if that's not clear to people. Oh, no. I definitely know there's going to be something to try and murder me in here. The thing is, I don't remember the game all that well. Sorry, Lord Gloom. I'll keep the screaming to a minimum. I really should do Justine at some point. Well, for what it's worth, Quinn, actually for anybody who's interested in this, I did, there is an easy mode which makes the monsters quite a bit more passive. The stuff on the floor is a really nice touch. I forgot about this. Oh, that's just mean. If I do this wrong, it's going to draw it right here. May also react less to sound than I... Now, of course, because I'm a complete troll, one of the things I would have done would be around this point, just have all the lights suddenly turn on. God, I hate campers. Yeah, the thing is, though, like, just having the lights suddenly turn on and, like, just naturally you're gonna react to that. Please stand by while we make as much noise as we possibly can. So yeah, it's just one of those things where, like, you know, you're being hunted by something in a room with a light suddenly turning on, even if you know that mechanically nothing changes in the game. You just suddenly feel really exposed. But I know one of the things that really made Amnesia work is that, like, the monsters in Amnesia aren't that scary when you look at them. They're actually kind of goofy looking, but they will terrify everyone because the mechanics of the game, like, really penalize you if you look at them. Like, it's actually in your interest not to look that closely. So instead you just have this, like, terrible thing in your imagination that's running you down. This... Oh! I'm totally misunderstood. I thought I was just supposed to survive for a certain period of time. We get to do that again. Yeah, no, that was totally my bad. I really thought that the beeping and all of that was frictional, just going full comedy and creating as many sounds. Thank you very much for the follow, Jay. Have a good and productive day. And thank you very much for hanging out and talking about the game with us. Definitely sounds like there's something here. Yep. I'm gonna guess it can handle doors, but the last one certainly could. Yep. I was kind of hoping it would be looking around for a little bit, but we'll just give it some space. You can see how you're currently craning your neck to see around the boxes. Are you kidding me? Stay absolutely silent. Oh, I am actually stuck. Alright, there we go. So something damaged me, but... yeah, we're not up to much, Cured Charlie. It's, minor inconvenience. A walking barnacle had some opinions.
Good job, John.
better have worked. I'm not going down there again.
I think you do heal over time, but I do imagine it's going to take a while and I'm going to be walking funny for a bit, so... Yes, I realize half of you
With all the people scanned for the arc,
chuckled at
someone
that.
must have had access to the Dunbat. If you find a scan of someone who knew the security cipher, maybe we can extract it somehow.
Extract from what? What exactly am I looking for?
Look for the large racks of data chips in the storage next to my lab. Should be plenty to choose from.
So maybe Keith for Quirin? And Strohmeyer, maybe.
Find someone who knows the security cipher.
I know games have done this before, but I seem to remember Soma, when I first saw it, was like the first time that I sort of saw these chromatic aberration effects and just, you know, some of the things they do with the lens flaring and all that, and I just thought this was like the best looking game. It's still, I think this game visually holds up very, very well. But I don't know, we're really spoiled with how good games look nowadays, so I kind of realize it's not the state of the art, but it definitely does what it does very well.
We should really look for a scan. Check the storage.
So I'm kind of curious if any of these look different first. The shiny one seems like a
An
good way to
intact
start.
memory chip. If we're lucky, we might be able to extract the cipher from it.
I don't think I even read this. Arc Scanlog, Catherine Chun, July 4th. Nikolai Ivashkin, July 5th. Jasper Hill, 6th. Sarah Lindwall, July 7th. Ian Peterson, July 8th. Heather Wolchek, July 10th. Mark Sarang, July 12th. Suicide. Arc Project on hold as Strohmeyer investigates the death of Sarang. M. Alvaro, 29th. Imogen Reed, 31st. Louise Muron, August 1st. Suicide. August 3rd. Jessica Davis. August 4th. Peter Strasky. Nathan Grau, August 5th, Suicide. Maggie, is it Komaribi? August 8th. Nadine Masters, August 9th. Vanessa Hart, August 10th. Keith Ford Quirin, August 11th. Gavin Finley, August 12th, Suicide. Baxter Rogers, August 17th. Chris Josick, August 18th. Evan Goya, August 19th. Astrid Creer, August 20th, Suicide. August 24th, Alice Coster. Brandon Wan, August 25th. Robin Bass, August 26th, Suicide. Strohmeyer reprimanded me, one more death and we're out. Dorian Kronstedt, August 29th. Martin Fisher, August 30th. Vigdis Jonsdottir, August 31st. Matthew Frost, September 1st. Kai Conrad, September 2nd. Suicide. Arc Project on hold indefinitely. Scheduled scans, Joaquin Defreen, John Strohmeyer, Richard Dabo, Jane Adams, Ashish Shankar, Mariska Daviau, and Sean Evans. They gotta plug these in somewhere. Oop. Float tank, water field, steel tank, sensory limiters, scan room with pilot seat, better continuation, not necessary for ARC. Beach, agreeable exterior to test, applied to ARC. And Versailles, agreeable interior to test, excellent. Data reconstructed by WoW, do not use. Screen. Are we talking with the Catherine in the Ark, though? I'm pretty sure we're talking with a different Catherine. I've completely lost track of where the various chips need to go, so I think I'm just going to do a patrol around the room again to make sure that I'm not completely losing it. If I remember correctly, you need to pick an environment that will actually get the information from the subject.
There should be a
Have a
list
good
of
one, Kieran.
people. See if there's anyone who could know a security cipher.
Said she'd help out delivering the ARC. Kill himself because of the continuity. Stromeyer is really mad. Is Titan Security. ARC project on hold. Brandon 1. Dale to refugee. Construct Wrangler. Another suicide. I don't know. Let's try. Oh, thank you very much, Quinn Gold.
No, won't work. We need someone from Theta Security Group.
Ah! There was a list of people, but it's not on this area. All right, let's...
That one won't work either. Look for security people at Kronstadt or Stromeyer.
All right, works for me. Doesn't say. I thought I checked. I just brought the wrong names. Maybe Strasky?
No, I don't think so. Stromeyer recruited people from the evacuated sites. They should also know the cipher, if you can find one of them.
It says Construct Wrangler, so I wouldn't have assumed, but let's see.
Very promising. I'll just load him up and get the simulator going. There we are.
What are we doing exactly?
We're gonna have a talk with Mr. Wan. Use the computer to activate the simulation.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, I just didn't pay attention to the other one.
That wasn't so bad. This trauma really got me worked up, bastard. What? Where did you... Alice?
Mr. Wan, can you hear me?
Chun? Where's Alice?
She's fine. We don't have much time, Mr. Wan. I need the new security cipher.
What? Why? Why would you need that? This is the trick.
Please, this is important.
I knew you couldn't be trusted. None of this is real. But you won't break me, WoW. You hear me? You won't break me!
Did we just bring that guy to life? I mean, he's a perfect scan, meant for the Ark. He's the real deal. And we turned him off. Took it all away again.
I really thought that was gonna work. Maybe we can try again.
That wasn't so bad. This trauma really got me worked up, bastard. What? How did I get here?
Welcome back, Mr. Wan.
Dr. Chun, is that you? What happened? What is this place?
Everything's fine. Theta needs your help. We need the new security cipher.
Dr. Chun? I hear your voice, but there's no one here. There's no one here. It's empty. It's too empty. There's something really wrong with this place. It's not real. This isn't real.
Wait! Simon, you just reset the simulation.
Yes, because it was going so well. How could I have?
That wasn't so bad. This trauma really got me worked up, bastard. What? What is this? Where am I?
Everything is okay, Mr. Wan. Just relax.
Dr. Chun? What the hell is this place?
I need a favor. I need to know what the new security cipher is.
Why are you doing this? Is this some trick? I'm not giving you anything.
Please, we really need that cipher.
No, you're lying. This is all a lie. Look at this place. It's a fucking joke. Get me out of here, Chun, or I'll punch your teeth in.
Do we need to turn it off? Can we just keep him alive until we've got the cipher?
The longer he's exposed to the computer model, the more he'll get hung up on it.
So, what's wrong with letting him settle in a little?
It would drive him insane. So let's keep the session short and the suffering to a minimum.
So I'm assuming that I'm missing something in terms of the support modules, but we've got 2 spots for chips, unless the beach was the right one and he calms down later. I'm just going to take a quick look at the agreeable exterior test. Yeah. Okay, let's try the beach one more time.
That wasn't so bad. This trauma really got me worked up, bastard. What? How did I get here?
Don't be afraid, Mr. Wan.
Dr. Chun, is that you? What happened? What is this place?
Just be calm. Take a deep breath and enjoy the scenery for a moment.
Dr. Chun? I hear your voice, but there's no one here. There's no one here. It's empty. It's too empty. There's something really wrong with this place. It's not real. This isn't real. I have to get out of here!
I think we need to build the scene so it's more what he'd expect. As soon as he starts to doubt, we've lost him.
You're right. We need to think this through. We need some more data.
Yeah, so the scan room was where I was going to go with it, but then he thought he was being tricked, so I guess maybe we'll try it one more time here, but I don't expect anything different.
That wasn't so bad. This trauma really got me worked up, bastard. What? Where did you... Alice?
Congratulations, Mr. Wan. The scan was successful.
Chun? Where's Alice?
She had to leave. Listen, I really need to know the new security cipher.
What? Why? Why would you need that? This is the trick.
No, it's okay, I promise.
I knew you couldn't be trusted. None of this is real. But you won't break me, WoW. You hear me? You won't break me!
This setup won't work. We need something else.
Okay, well, I don't think we can change from the individual, so there's something about the module that I got wrong. Actually, maybe I could be wrong on that. It might be that there's another subject in the areas here, but I'm kind of doubt it. Actually, the one thing I didn't try was just no environment.
That wasn't so bad. Soma really got me worked up, bastard. What? What happened? Where did everyone go?
Don't be afraid.
Chun? What happened? I can't see anything. There's nothing here.
It's okay. It's all a part of the scam.
No, that's a lie. You're lying.
Okay, calm down, Mr. Wan.
No. Well, why are you doing this to me? I trusted you, Chun. I trusted you!
How many times are we gonna have to do this?
Until you get it right, Simon.
Now.
Okay, so clearly the support module is the factor that I'm missing here, but I don't think there was anything on the computer that I checked before. Yes, we couldn't do anything with the scans. We have the test environments. All of these either were corrupted or we can't use. This is what's on the chip. The only other thing I could imagine would be if there was either another chip somewhere or something I needed to pull from one of the other computers, but that would be a little odd to make me go all the way back downstairs to get the module. So I'm gonna double check that there wasn't anything here that I needed to worry about first. And then I'm gonna head back to the other rooms. Actually, Catherine's room might be a place I want to check. How are you doing? There was a button to erase data on the previous computer, Slippy. Welcome back, Neurological. I hope you enjoyed your dinner. I think that's what you were up to. I should also mention, too, that I started right at the tail end of my normal starting time, and I do need to be at work tomorrow, so I don't have that much more for the game. The thing is, I also don't think there's that much more of the game left. One more idiot check here, just because I'm the kind of idiot that won't check. Have a good one, Quinn Gold. Thanks for stopping by. And, of course, the resub. So these are always, I always feel that these are kind of a weird way of trying to solve a spot that I've gotten hung up on, because like there's no real reason for me to go and check out this
I
room.
wish I knew Brandon better. What would make him talk?
I'll just override the lock for you.
There we go. Yeah, so this is specifically because of the damage that I've taken. So there's a couple things going on. So there's the chromatic aberration, which is what I think what you're referring to. Now that sometimes happens even without it. But the best way to sort of see it is just to take a look at a light. So you have like sort of the blue and the red. That is actually, incidentally, for the game designers among you, that's something that ships with Unity, as it has for a while. So if you ever want to throw that in your games, you can have fun with that. Don't overuse it, please. But also just little details in terms of sort of how my movement works, how quickly I move, and all of that. As another factor, they do a really good job of selling it. The good news is that when you are looking at items, it does allow you to focus. So.
Waiting for Stratsky and Alvaro to pack up their stuff. Head downstairs and I'll meet you there.
Don't take too long.
Don't worry, we're right behind you.
Seems like they were getting ready to leave. Heard some lady telling Brandon to hurry up.
You got that from the intercom? Must be a transmission buffer. Hang on. That's Alice Coster. Wouldn't have guessed they even knew of each other. Interesting.
Staff Wrangler, Brendan Wan, male, 177 centimeters, 84 kilograms, Chinese, birthplace Hong Kong, service record, duty 2102, profession Wrangler, site Delta, security clearance YYC. Brandon, I'm really a mess about the scan. Everyone is being so brave. All smiles, no regrets. You know how you said you would hold my hand during the scan? If the offer still stands, I gratefully accept. If we do it together, we could suffer the hangover together as well. They say it takes a couple of days to recover. Kisses, Alice.
There's a note from Alice that makes me think she was scanned alongside Brandon.
Okay, that sounds really promising. We can definitely use that. I think we got this, Simon. I can synthesize Alice's voice from the intercom and use it to impersonate her for the simulation. We could trick them into feeling safe enough to open up.
Great. Definitely feeling good about this.
Good job with the intercom. I didn't know you could data mine. What's it like?
It's just something that I do now.
So it comes naturally to you. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I'll make sure to add it to my dating profile.
August 14th, 2103. Akers finally agreed to evacuate Delta. Goya, Creer, and I moved into Theta today. Akers said that he'd stick around for a while longer, that crazy bastard. I take pride in my work, but god damn that place is miserable since the surface stopped sending us parts.
I found more evidence suggesting they were together during the scan.
That's okay, Sherlock. We got it already. Focus on simulating Brandon Wan.
So I'm just taking a second here to remember, I'm actually pretty sure we're close to the end. But, I don't know, I probably also have another stream worth. Yeah, we'll probably take care of Brandon. Did my ARC scan together with Alice. Strohmeyer told me that the hangover would basically kill me. Such an asshole. I was fine at first, but I got a splitting headache and a couple hours later. The biggest pain was that Chun girl. She is so fucking uncomfortable at all times it makes my skin crawl. Strohmeyer went ballistic and shut down all future scans for the ARC project. Apparently Conrad wanted in on the continuity and just fried himself right in the pilot seat after the scan. Something tells me we'll be getting new security ciphers. January 15th, 2104, just heard that Komaribi survey team is going to Delta to pick up Akers. He's been gone for months now, can't imagine what he's been up to. This is not where I want to be.
I compiled an Alice module that we can use.
So she'll be with Brandon in the simulation.
Sort of. I'll still need to do the talking, but it'll sound and look like Alice.
That wasn't so bad. Strohmeyer really got me worked up, bastard. What? Where did... Alice?
The scan is done. Are you feeling all right, Mr. Wan?
Chun? Where's Alice? That wasn't so bad. Strohmeyer really got me worked up, bastard.
Well, that's what you get for listening to his stories.
I guess I had it coming.
About Strohmeyer. He said he needed a new cipher ASAP. What should I tell him?
It's alright. I can talk to him.
Wait, didn't Chun just tell you to take it easy? Don't worry, I'm not gonna tell anyone.
I do feel hungover. Okay. It's 1729 over 42, 12 over 407. Got it?
Yeah, I got it. I'm sorry, Mr. Wan. Brandon. Goodbye.
What do you mean? No, wait.
That's enough. We got what we need.
Is that what we are? Simulations?
Yeah, but it shouldn't make any difference. You're still you. I'm not sure what to do with the data. You decide.
Play the sad music. What are we gonna do, chat? Do we race? Do we shut down? This is like probably how we're gonna finish off the stream. So I will let the people have their say, like in that royalty game I was playing. For those of you, by the way, I know I've been using the term chromatic aberration a whole lot. It's a interesting one. Erase. Interesting. Everybody else think we should erase? I'd love to hear reasoning as well. This is kind of fun. Again, this just comes from knowing about lenses and stuff like that. But there's a bunch of neat little properties about lenses where one of the things that's kind of fun about trying to achieve realism nowadays. Speaking of realism, you can see realism in the fine Warbringers of Angrul, brought to you by Vanguard Master. But very often now we are less focused on creating these ideal images, and actually the way that we are kind of communicating a higher degree of reality, very often is through errors. So, for instance, if you're playing a game, right, you're in a perfectly simulated environment. You don't need to worry about a lens, right? Essentially, all that you need to deal with is how you are going to represent the world in terms of a series of, of pixels on the monitor. But in the real world, when we take photos, there are imperfections in our different lenses. How interesting. This person died, and what is left on the system, in your opinion, is not real. So Simon and Catherine aren't real as well. Interesting. I'm actually also trying to remember what I did last time, but yeah. So in terms of chromatic aberration, it basically, now again, I know this a little bit more in terms of like working with lenses as opposed to the optics behind it, but I believe the idea here, like the point of a lens is to focus. And the problem here is it's never going to be perfect, and so essentially you have sort of different colors. You have the spectrum, right? And so there's going to be at certain as you focus, as you sort of shift the position of the lens, it's going to be more or less clear. So generally, I think usually you'll see chromatic aberration generally around the edges of an image is usually what I've sort of seen, although, your mileage may vary. And higher quality lenses have higher precision. It's the sort of same with things like, bokeh, and there's a number of different little details that you can look at in terms of lenses. Also, the types of flares that they give, like some flares or some lenses are picked because of sort of the way they flare in a particularly nice way. But yeah, in the case of chromatic aberration, I basically just think that you're dealing with the fact that you're kind of dealing with the imperfections of the lens, and so as a result, you're getting a few different kind of colors coming in at different differences. It's actually one thing that's kind of a fun trick that you can do if you have corrected vision. People always look at me weird when I do this, but my glasses kind of broke, and I never wound up getting some replacements because I can generally see fine without glasses. There's only a couple of times when I need to like really, really focus on stuff, so I very often won't even bother putting in contacts or something like that. And I'm sure the photographers among you will know that if you take the aperture down, right, if you go to a very high t-stop or f-stop, depending on what you're looking at. I think the t-stop compensates for other properties of the lens, whereas f-stops are specific measures of the tightness. But basically, if you have a big wide open lens, if you kind of like that really soft focus, so like if you really like it, so in a movie, you'll have a close-up on someone and their face is really clear, but everything in the background is really fuzzy. You can do that through two things. One is to get in close, because the closer you are to something, I mean, you can do this with your finger, right? You put your finger in close and you focus on your finger, then the monitor in the background is going to be completely blurry. And then if you sort of extend your hand far away, you're not going to have like a perfect image of everything behind it, but it's not just because you're, like for me, my monitor's about arm's length away, so I'm looking at, two items in the same plane. That's, focal. That's not the best focus example. Basically, the further out you have something, generally you're just able to see more and more. So distance will sort of help. But the big one would be the f-stop or the t-stop. If you have that really narrow area that all the light's going through, essentially it's forced to sort of go through all one way. And as a consequence, you have this very deep focus. So like if you like movies like Citizen Kane is probably the most famous example of the use of deep focus. That was achieved through putting down taking a very high f-stop, making the aperture really, really small. But the neat trick that you can do for yourself, again, if you have some kind of vision well, I guess it depends on the type of vision correction, but like for me, because things at a distance will be a little bit fuzzier, I can actually I usually just kind of take my index finger and I just put it into almost this small pinhole. And that's usually enough for me to be able to see the letters more clearly. And again, everybody's like wondering, is like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, no, I wanted to read the really tight, it's usually a PowerPoint presentation where they didn't actually bother to proofread the thing, and they decided to put really, really small print at the bottom of the screen. So just take a quick second to do that. But again, like, it'd probably be better if I just wore contacts at work so people don't ask the question. But there you go. There's some stuff about lenses. But yeah, anyway, so the way that these games feels to a certain degree are achieving a certain degree of reality is by basically introducing all of these things that we consider to be imperfections in lenses that we actually try to minimize. Whereas now we actually have people who are trying to put this stuff into virtual environments, create all of the imperfections of different lenses. So even like the vignetting on old lenses and things like that. You have kind of games at least giving you the option of adding those now, and sometimes they can make for some really really neat experiences. If you ever wanted to cheat on an eye test, you can squeeze or squint your eyes and you briefly get some clear vision. Yeah, it's the exact same principle. So I imagine that they probably would be looking to see if you're doing that. But yeah, it's the exact same principle. Essentially, because you're squinting your eyes, you're forcing the light through this smaller opening. And so instead of having, all of these different directions, essentially you have they're kind of going in like arrows, straight arrows rather. And that's what allows you to see a little more clearly. So whether I usually like taking the example, it's easier to simulate an aperture if basically you make the OK symbol with your index and forefinger, and then you start sort of sliding that index finger along to close it down. That's where you start approximating the effect. But for me, I tend to work a little bit better with extremes. So in my case, when I go from like a wide open image to sort of that pinhole image, that's a little bit clearer for me. And so in my own particular case, I usually just, take the index finger, I narrow it down to the smallest little opening that I can get, put it over my eye, and then take it away. And that's usually the best way of doing it. Hopefully at least someone else in chat did this so that I don't feel like a complete goof doing this in front of my monitor, but I probably need to wrap up for tonight. So because chat really wants me to erase the data, we'll shut it down. You all can play Soma I have seen The Prestige, yes. I don't want to talk too much about what you're talking about, but if you are around for a later part of this playthrough, I think you I don't know if Dendrian is being very sarcastic, borderline mean. So yeah, Lord Gloom, I don't want to go too far with The Prestige. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I don't know if you've played this game, but you are touching on something that will definitely be addressed in this game, and in fact is to a certain extent already being touched on in this game with the idea of the continuity, the people deciding, that to make sure that they are preserved, that they, they're going to kill themselves before there can be a divergence between the two. Basically, I'm really trying to come up with a way of trying to address the. I'm really trying to find a way that I can address this without like talking too much. Like this can be handled completely on its own, right? So we've got Simon Jarrett, who died before, who died in the past, died in 2015. We hear the recording of our own death. We've seen an image of ourselves in the mirror as the mechanical diving suit, so there's absolutely no question that we are a robot. This is also something that the character says to Catherine. The index note, that kind of feels like an inappropriate one. I don't want to like make a big deal about it. That feels a little inappropriate, at least from where we were on this one. But yeah, you've got the kind of copy of the copy of the person. So the first step that it's taking is, you know, do you still consider this a person? We kind of had to answer that question by destroying one of the robots. It's not the first time we've had to destroy a robot that's shown shown kind of examples of consciousness or this memory that was scanned. So to a certain extent, depending on an interesting dilemma that kind of comes up in this game. I don't know if Gloom, I don't know if you played it or not, but one interesting problem I had to run into was basically using the stun baton to destroy either what seemed to be like a broken worker robot, but that was talking like a normal person, or this cute little helper bot, which did not express sort of any feelings about anything because it was incapable of expressing feelings. And the game very specifically told us that it could not have any kind of consciousness transfer. And so the interesting kind of dilemma that you bring up with this, the way that you reacted to the idea of whether or not we should erase or delete it, is you say, if it's not a real person, right? If this copy isn't the same person, then I shouldn't feel really bad about using the stun gun to destroy that robot and take out its tool, because in the end it was never a real person. And you know, that's not even necessarily inconsistent with the experience that I'm getting as Simon Jarrett, because you know, yeah, no, I'm not a real person. You know, I am this thing that is experiencing some approximation of it, but in the end, you know, I still won't call myself a person, right? Like I'm not trying to suggest that there's an inconsistency with that view. It may not be the one that I share in terms of the game, but so the neat part about this is that you get a chance, and this is one of the things that I think Soma does very well, is that you actually get to think on some of your past choices with some of the later information that you get. So depending on how you react to this idea of Brandon being in this simulation that you've created specifically to get information from him, and how you feel about the idea of shutting down or erasing it, that might have something to say with your that might have something to say about maybe some of your previous decisions that maybe you would choose to do differently. It's one of the things that I like the most about Soma, is that it layers its ideas in such a way that you kind of get mileage out of some of the previous moments if you're in a particularly contemplative mood, which clearly I am. On your motion sick note, I should actually take a moment. Not that I don't feel like I have to sell the game for people. I think the game kind of speaks for itself, but I don't recall if they... I can't imagine it would be under the controller options. I'm a little surprised that they don't have kept the bob. Guess they did. Yeah. But yeah, for those of you who are talking about not liking the jumps or the monsters or something like that, there is an easy mode which will render the enemies spooky but passive. Yeah, for sure, nearly logical. Like I mean, I think it's a good hook. Like what you're talking about, I think it's a good hook for the game. but I don't necessarily think that's really where its heart lies. I actually think that question is dealt with fairly early on in the game. I think it's a good way to like get people into it. But yeah, no, I think the more interesting, I mean, essentially the very end, I think, is definitely one that provokes a lot of thought. I think people have been primed to think about that stuff, and definitely it's been talked about. Like, it's possible. I think when I played this the first time, I talked about something very similar to what the ending wound up being. Not saying that I anticipated the ending, but basically a lot of the thoughts that had kind of come up in the ending, I sort of feel like we dealt with to a fairly high degree. But I mean, again, you have different, everybody has kind of different reactions and sort of a different pace at which they start thinking about these. So again, I like the way that the game sort of layers it in and lets you think and also rethink about certain things. I can't think of a lot of games that that take that approach, and it's one that I really appreciate. Sorry you can't hear the sound, but I just need to try and find someone to host tonight. Oh, you know what? It looks like Revived Snow is playing recontextualization is a much more elegant phrase than what I was using. Sorry, I'm tired and dumb. Yeah, I'm gonna raid Revive Snow tonight because one, it's been a while, and number two, they are playing Rouge Trader, which I know people were a little surprised to see me play last week. I'm almost certainly going to be back to Book of Hours on Friday, so I'm not 100% sure where I will be able to pack away Soma, but I will do my best to touch on that as soon as I can. In terms of next week, I don't remember if New Year's Day comes up on a stream day. Let me take a look. Looks like New Year's Day is a Monday, so I will probably take that off. I always reserve the option of thank you, Index Gnome, and thank you, Ionix. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. But yeah, no promises on Monday. I think I'm probably more inclined to take the break, because it's worth remembering I am starting a new job at the end of January, and I have a lot of stuff that I need to finish at work on top of all of the other stuff. So, yeah, let's say most likely Book of Hours Friday. And we'll play Wednesday and Friday next week by ear. But thank you, everybody. Merry post-Christmas, and please enjoy Revive Snow. I completely filibustered the ending here. Talk to you later. Bye.